Chapter 1693. At the same time, in the hall outside the room where Mira, Lisanna, Shuanai, and Lucy were staying, Noah was sitting in front of a sofa with a box in his hand. Looking at the box in his hand, Noah smiled helplessly. I didn't expect that I would only remember their existence now. Fortunately, I didn't directly forget about it. Otherwise, it would be a bit of a waste. The things in the box had indeed been forgotten by Noah for quite some time. Looking at the time in the outside world, the things in the box had been left unused by Noah for more than 7 years. It was only today that Noah remembered it and asked Makarov to go back to Magnolia to find the box in his room and bring it here. With them, I think that Shuanai's strength should be a level higher, right? Noah intended to give the things in the box to Shuanai. Consider it as making up for the suffering that girl has suffered in the past 7 years. This was Noah's idea. After all, Noah had to bear part of the responsibility for Shuanai's unhappy 7 years. Moreover, Shuanai had already joined Fairy Tale and was already one of Noah's important companions. In addition, the person who led Shuanai into Fairy Tale was Noah, and even the person who made Shuanai a magic shooter and a star elf archmage was Noah. It was reasonable for Noah to give the things in the box to Shuanai. Just as Noah was thinking about this, a burst of sweet laughter and panicked voices came from the room, attracting Noah's attention. Then, Noah heard such a conversation. Wait. Wait. Lady Mira. Lady Lisanna. Shuanai, what's wrong? Don't you have to hurry up and go out? Big brother Noah is still waiting for you. Lisanna, but I'm like this now. Shuanai, it's okay, Shuanai is so cute, Noah will definitely like you. Mira, alright, hurry up and get out. Lucy, wait a minute. You know, when that panicked voice sounded, the door was opened and Shuanai was pushed out by several hands. When the panic-stricken Shuanai was pushed out, the door was immediately closed, leaving Shuanai alone in front of the door, not knowing what to do. Looking at Shuanai standing in front of the door, Noah's breath slightly stagnated. This was because right now, Shuanai was only wearing a thin shirt that was extremely transparent. One could even clearly see the skin underneath. Other than a thin shirt, Snow didn't seem to be wearing anything else, revealing a pair of smooth, white, and slender thighs. That seductive outfit was simply challenging the limits of a man's rationality. At the very least, Noah's mouth was slightly agape. He couldn't react in time. Lord Noah. Shuanai tried to push the door, but in the end, she couldn't enter. She could only resist Noah's gaze and protect her body with both hands. She spoke softly as if she was about to cry. Please don't look at me like this. Hearing this, Noah finally reacted and quickly retracted his gaze. He secretly cried out in his heart. This must be Mira and Lisanna's prank. Looking at Noah's awkward expression, Shuanai's pretty face was also slightly red. She didn't know how to react at all. Seeing this, Noah could only laugh bitterly. Alright, don't stand there. Come and sit down. Shuanai hesitated for a moment, then walked lightly to the front of Noah and sat down. Her hands were tightly pressed against the hem of her shirt in an attempt to cover some places that shouldn't be seen. However, Shuanai didn't notice that this way, her collar loosened instead. Noah, who inadvertently caught a glimpse of her alluring skin, smiled even more bitterly. However, he didn't remind her to avoid making the atmosphere even more awkward. Then, Noah looked at Shuanai and said, Actually, I have something to give to you. Something. Shuanai's attention was successfully diverted. Noah didn't say anything. He only placed the box in his hand on the table in front of them and opened it. In the next moment, the item in the box was revealed. Inside, there were actually 3 resplendent keys that were as bright as gold. Obviously, they were the star elemental keys of the 12 zodiac gates. This is. Xuanai looked at Noah in shock and spoke with uncertainty. For me. That's right. Noah nodded. The 3 keys are the Aries, Gemini and Scorpio constellations of the 12 zodiac gates. Now, they belong to you. How? How can I? Xuanai hurriedly shook her head. The star elemental keys that belong to the 12 zodiac gates are very expensive magic tools. I can't accept it. Just accept it. Noah comforted the somewhat flustered Xuanai and smiled. No matter how expensive something is, it is only valuable when it is put to use. I'm not a star elemental mage. It's a waste to leave these 3 keys with me. Giving them to someone useful will show their value. In that case, they should be given to Lady Lucy. Xuanai lowered her head. I'm just a newcomer who just joined the guild. I can't accept such expensive things. I initially wanted to give them to Lucy, but unfortunately, I forgot. Noah scratched his cheek. Moreover, Lucy already has 7 keys to the 12 zodiac gates. You only have 2 keys to the 12 zodiac gates. If I give them to you, they should be of more use. Lady Lucy already has 7 keys to the 12 zodiac gates. Xuanai was surprised and looked at the 3 golden keys on the table. Doesn't that mean that with the 3 keys here and the 2 keys in my hands, the 12 keys to the 12 zodiac gates are all gathered here? That's right. Noah said. So, don't decline and accept it. The star elemental keys of Aries, Gemini and Scorpio were all plundered by Noah from Angel of the 6 demon generals. Oration cease. Later, Angel did not get the key back from Noah. After Noah let her go, she left. Originally, Noah wanted to give these 3 keys to Lucy for her to use. Who would have thought that he would actually forget about it and leave the 3 keys behind until now? After understanding this, Xuanai was still somewhat hesitant. In desperation, Noah could only use his trump card. What? You don't like what I gave you? No. It's not like that. Xuanai stood up, more or less agitated. Definitely not like that. The overly agitated Xuanai did not notice. Because of the large movement, all kinds of terrible scenery started to be exposed from the thin shirt, causing Noah to be dumbfounded. He could only hurriedly speak. Then accept it properly. Who knows, you might need it tomorrow. Tomorrow? Xuanai was stunned. Yes, tomorrow. Noah nodded. Because the competition today was too intense, Gadgely used up a lot of energy, so, I want to let him rest for a day, and let you fight as a substitute member of Team B. Wah. What? Xuanai was really surprised. But, without giving Xuanai a chance to reject, Noah said directly. Now, in the guild, other than the participants of Team A and Team B, you are the strongest. Don't you want to represent the guild in the competition? But. Xuanai said as if she could not let go. I'm just a newbie. To us, there's no difference between new and old. Noah looked straight at Xuanai and said word by word. As long as it's a guild, then you are our comrade. We will fight for our comrades who have waited bitterly for us for 7 years, and win the victory of the Great Demon Battle Arts Exhibition. I also hope that you will contribute your strength for your comrades. This sentence pierced deeply into Xuanai's heart. For comrades. Xuanai muttered. For comrades, Noah nodded, picked up the 3 keys, and handed it to Xuanai. Xuanai looked at the 3 keys, and after a while, she took a deep breath, stretched out her hand, and held them tightly. Noah then smiled. Chapter 1694. Thus, the next day, Noah immediately announced to the members of Fairy Tale that Xuanai would take Gadgely's place today. As for Gadgely, he would stay in the hotel to rest. Regarding this, Gadula was extremely unwilling, but in the end, he couldn't go against everyone's opinion. He could only lie on the bed with a sullen expression, refusing to make a sound, just like a child throwing a tantrum. Because of this, Alusha also made a last-minute decision to let Naz rest in the hotel, and let Elfman appear as a substitute member of Team A. Naturally, Naz also resisted with all his might, making more noise than Gadulu, but in the end, he was knocked down by Alusha with a single punch, and became completely silent. Just like that, a group of fairy tale magic shooters arrived at the dome, and just like yesterday, they were divided into the contestant group and the spectator group, entering the venue from two different paths. Perhaps it was because enemies were bound to meet on a narrow road, but today, Noah's group also met a certain degree of archenemy. Sabretooth's group, who had just entered the passageway for the contestants, immediately stopped in their tracks when they saw Fairy Tale's group. Their expressions turned solemn. This was especially so for Sting, Logue, Lucius, and Olga. When they saw Noah walking at the head of the group, not only did their faces darken, there was even a hint of fear in their eyes. Under such circumstances, Noah noticed another person. A girl who was leading Sting, Logue, Lucius, and Olga's group. She was obviously the leader of the group, and was dressed in a somewhat flamboyant manner. Seeing this girl, Xuanai cried out in surprise. "Miss Xuanai." Meniba turned her gaze and cast it on Xuanai, and a smile that reminded people of a poisonous snake appeared on her face. "I didn't expect that after not seeing you for a few days, you would actually betray us. Xuanai, this choice of yours is not very wise." "No." The surprise on Xuanai's face slowly disappeared, and was replaced by her usual unswerving determination. "I think this is the best choice I have made in my life." "Oh." Meniba obviously didn't expect Xuanai to refute her like this. She was a little surprised and sneered. "You've changed a little, although these changes are a little stupid." Xuanai ignored Meniba's mockery and looked straight at her. "Today, I will be a substitute member of Fairy Tale B. If I have the chance to go on stage, I won't lose." Mississippi, hearing this, Meniba's face sank. That was to be expected. Until yesterday, Xuanai was still a member of Sabretooth. After losing to Noah in yesterday's match, she joined Fairy Tale today and entered the competition as a member of Fairy Tale. If that happened, what would others think? Others would definitely think so. Looks like that contestant called UNI thinks that with the strength of Sabretooth, there's no way to beat Fairy Tale. That's why she joined Fairy Tale, right? Although people with discerning eyes would definitely be able to see some clues, but people are creatures that subconsciously believe what they see as reality, so there will definitely be many people who think so. If that was the case, then the reputation of Sabretooth would be completely ruined. So that's how it is. Meniba turned to look at Noah and said sarcastically. "As expected of Fairy Tale, what a good move." Meniba thought that Noah deliberately let Xuanai go on stage to create this situation. Noah didn't want to explain. He just met Meniba's gaze and smiled. "Your guild leader of Sabretooth originally planned to expel Xuanai from the guild. Since that is the case, who do you think should be blamed for this situation? Father is indeed too impulsive and arrogant." Meniba shrugged and smiled. "But this is how our strongest guild does things." Hearing Meniba's words, Noah raised his eyebrows, took a step forward, leaned in front of Meniba, and said softly. "So, your so-called title as the strongest guild won't last long." Meniba's flirtatious smile suddenly froze. After leaving this sentence, Noah glanced at Sting, Roger, Lucifer, and Olga. Under the four people's fearful gazes, he lightly said to his companions. "Okay, let's go in." With that, Noah led the crowd into the venue. Meniba's eyes flickered as she stared at Noah's receding figure. Looking at Meniba, Sting asked tentatively. "Young miss." "I'm fine." Miniba took a deep breath and said seriously. Is he no Adol? She asked. It is indeed quite difficult to deal with. This man is too powerful, Lucifer said in a low voice. If we don't have a way to deal with him, I think it will be very difficult for us to win. Don't worry. I have as many ways to deal with a man as I want. Miniba smiled coldly. After all, an individual with great strength can become the best soldier and the best general. However, if one wants to become the best king, strength alone is not enough. I'll show him. Miniba licked her lips, her eyes shining with a vicious light. It's a battle style that belongs to kings. Oh! The loud cheers seemed to never stop. With the enthusiasm of the audience, they constantly reverberated in the air above the venue. Today, the dome, flattened bird was still full. The audience was everywhere, and it was very lively. Taking a closer look, there were actually people in the audience who started to raise the banner of Fairy Tale, cheering for Fairy Tale. Under such circumstances, on the platform, Chapati raised the microphone and expanded his voice to the entire venue. Ladies and gentlemen, now, it is finally the third day of our Great Demon Battle Arts competition. Today, what kind of wonderful performances will the 8 participating teams bring us? Even I, Chapati Laura, am looking forward to it. Along with Chapati's voice, a projection magic crystal unfolded in the air above the venue, reflecting the current rankings of the 8 participating teams. Among them, Team A and Team B, which belonged to Fairy Tale, firmly occupied the first place. The audience holding the flag of Fairy Tale and cheering for Fairy Tale collectively cheered. As we can see, currently, the 2 teams of Fairy Tale occupy the first and second place respectively. However, the difference in points between them and the other teams is not very big. It is entirely possible that they will be overtaken. After today, what kind of changes will occur in the rankings of the major guilds? Let's wait and see. Then, let's begin the third day of the Great Demon Battle Arts Competition Demon Subduing Hall. Chapati began to announce. Every team, please send a contestant to participate in the competition of Demon Subduing Hall. Noah looked at the projection magic crystal in the center of the venue and fell into deep thought. What? You don't know who to send? Laxus asked. If it's necessary, it's not a problem to send me. Mira, Snow, and Julian all looked at Noah. Under the gazes of his companions, Noah raised his head and spoke calmly. No. Let me go. Chapter 1695. You. Mira, Yukino, Jubian, and Laxus all looked at Noah in surprise. Noah nodded under everyone's gaze. In yesterday's competition, our Team A and B didn't get many points. Although we barely managed to stay at the top of the leaderboard because of the duels, it's just like what the report said. The gap between us and the other teams isn't that big. We could be overtaken at any time. So, I'll be the one in today's competition. Hearing this, Mira, Jubian, and Laxus fell into deep thought. That. Yukino said guiltily. I'm really sorry. It's all my fault, obviously. Yukino was concerned about Noah's words. After all, on the first day of the competition, Yukino was the one who defeated both teams. At that time, you weren't a member of our guild. Naturally, you had to do your best to get points for your guild. So, don't feel guilty about it. Noah patted Yukino's shoulder and walked past everyone into the competition venue. Then, I'll be right back. Be careful. Mira reminded him. Don't do anything rash. Noah raised a hand, indicating that they didn't need to worry. Then, he walked into the venue. At the same time, the other teams also decided on their candidates. Good. Every team has decided on their contestants. Chapati reported loudly. Let's see what kind of contestants the 8 teams sent out. Raventail has sent out contestant Obra. Sabertooth sent out contestant Olga. Mermaid Heel has sent out contestant Miliana. Blue Pegasus has sent out a loud contestant. Lamia Scale sent out contestant Karaa. Cotter Cerberus sent out contestant Nobali. Fairy Tail A has sent out contestant Alusha. Finally, the player that Fairy Tail B sent out is actually player Noah. Chapati couldn't help but raise his voice. Could it be that we're lucky enough to see that kind of terrifying power that's beyond the scope of human beings today? The audience suddenly burst into cheers. Clearly, the power that Noah had displayed yesterday was still vivid in the minds of those who had witnessed it with their own eyes. That kind of power that did not seem to belong to humans, would he be lucky enough to witness it again today? Everyone was looking forward to it, but they were also uneasy. At the same time, they felt extremely excited. Thus, flags with the emblem of Fairy Tail were continuously raised in the audience seats. There were even couplets painted with eye-catching paint. And the words marked on the horizontal couplet were a name. Noah Dole. Seeing this scene, Noah didn't know what kind of expression to make. He could only helplessly smile. Alusha, who had unknowingly appeared beside Noah, also smiled and said, "It seems that after yesterday, many people have become your fans." "I can see that." Noah shrugged. "I hope that this popularity will bring a lot of commissions and business to our guild in the future." Alusha couldn't help but laugh. The 8 contestants immediately gathered in the middle of the venue. Then, Jola took a step forward and looked at Noah with an unyielding smile on his rock-like face. "I can fight with you again. I hope that in the arena, I can at least take back some ground from you." It was clear that yesterday, Noah had easily defeated Jola with less than 1% of his power. Jola's speech didn't suffer a blow to this St. Magus. It was better to say that after understanding the gap between him and Noah, Jola was like a young man who didn't want to admit defeat. "I won't lose either." Miriana raised her hand and giggled. "Whether it's little Elu or little Noah, don't think that you can easily beat me." Noah and Alusha both smiled and nodded. Apart from Jola and Miriana, the others weren't so optimistic. Olga, in particular, still looked at Noah with a trace of fear in his eyes. Then, let the demon-subduing hall competition begin. At this time, the pumpkin referee jumped out of nowhere and raised his hands high. "Let's welcome our venue demon-subduing hall." As soon as his voice fell. Clang! In the sky above the venue, a purplish-black radiance suddenly flickered without any warning, illuminating the entire dome of the Frobird. Everyone present raised their heads and looked at the sky. There, a huge purple-black magic array suddenly rotated and covered the sky above the venue. Immediately after, along with a wave of mana, a gigantic darkness shrine slowly emerged from the purplish-black magic array. It descended from the sky and landed heavily in the direction of the venue below. Boom! After a loud sound, the huge temple of darkness fell on the ground of the venue, setting off a gust of wind and dust. The ground shook slightly, shocking many people. "That's..." Everyone looked at the huge temple of darkness in amazement. Under such circumstances, the pumpkin started giggling. "What you see now is our demon-subduing hall, which is also your next arena." Saying such a sentence, the pumpkin's tone became dangerous. "Of course, that's not an ordinary arena. Just like its name, Demon-Subduing Hall, there are a total of 100 monsters in this Temple of Darkness. There are 100 monsters in there." All the contestants were shocked. Even Noah couldn't help but raise his head and look at the demon-subduing hall in front of him, frowning slightly. He didn't expect the kingdom to capture monsters and bring them to the venue as part of a competition. If the captured monsters went berserk and rushed out of the demon-subduing hall, it would be no laughing matter. Could it be that the kingdom was so reckless because there were so many high mages from the guilds here? There was also a slight commotion in the surrounding audience, faintly feeling uneasy. Well, everyone, don't worry. Those aren't real monsters, they're just substitutes that we've materialized using magic. The pumpkin seemed to want to reassure everyone, waving her hand. So, the monsters definitely won't rush out of the demon-subduing hall to hurt people, please don't worry. Hearing this, the surrounding audience breathed a sigh of relief in unison. However, the group of magic shooters exclaimed in amazement because of this. For the sake of a competition, the kingdom had actually gone to such great lengths to materialize 100 monsters using magic. It wouldn't be a big deal if they were just ordinary monsters. However, if they were placed in front of the elite magic shooters of so many outstanding guilds, those monsters definitely wouldn't be low-leveled, right? If Shifeng summoned 100 of these monsters, just how many magic crystals would he have to burn to cover the cost of his mana consumption? For the sake of a competition, the kingdom was actually willing to spend so much. How rich and overbearing. Thinking about it carefully, for the first day of the competition, the organizers had similarly used a town as a venue. The mana consumption was similarly frightening. In the end, with such a consumption, how much mana would the cost of a single great demon battle exhibition be? The organizers were truly rich and overbearing. The group of magic shooters sighed emotionally. Only Noah narrowed his eyes slightly. In Noah's opinion, no matter what, the kingdom couldn't possibly burn such a large sum of money every year for the sake of an entertainment festival. Unless, of course, the kingdom had other motives. Or perhaps, the mana that was consumed was actually the mana that was unknowingly absorbed from the archmages during the previous great demon combat exercises. In other words, the mana absorption that Noah had felt before was very likely the kingdom's doing. The kingdom. Noah raised his head and looked in the direction of the palace. I hope you won't do anything to make me unhappy, Noah didn't notice. While he was looking in the direction of the palace, a shadow quietly appeared in a corner of the venue. Chapter 1696. Just as Noah was looking thoughtfully at the palace's location, the explanation of the competition's content began. We've divided the 100 monsters into 5 grades, S, A, B, C, and D. According to the grades, the number and strength of the monsters are also different. Pumpkin raised a finger. Among them, there are 50 D-class monsters, 30 C-class monsters, 15 B-class monsters, 4 A-class monsters, and only 1 S-class monster, which is the highest level, Feng Luo said. All the contestants need to do is draw lots. Then, according to the order of the lots drawn, everyone will enter the demon-subduing hall. Pumpkin raised a second finger. However, before entering the demon-subduing hall, the contestants need to confirm how many monsters they want to challenge. Once they've confirmed, the demon-subduing hall will have the same number of monsters as the contestant's choice, but the monsters' grades will be random. After that, the contestants can enter the demon-subduing hall and challenge the monsters. No matter what the monster's grade is, each monster defeated will be counted as 1 point. Only after defeating all the monsters of their choice will they be able to exit the demon-subduing hall. At this point, Pumpkin raised a third finger. There's one thing to note, and that is, if a contestant is defeated in the process of challenging the demon-subduing hall, then in this round of challenges, no matter how many monsters they defeat, their points will return to 0. Unless they've successfully obtained points when they entered the demon-subduing hall, they can only be eliminated with 0 points. Finally, according to everyone's points, we'll come up with a ranking. Pumpkin seemed to kindly remind them. By the way, although there's only 1 S-grade monster, according to the strength we've set, that monster has a strength that even the 10 great saint magicians may not be able to defeat. This sentence caused everyone's eyebrows to rise. At the same time, they had a deeper admiration for the palace's wealth. If even a monster comparable to the 10 great saint magicians was conjured, then the magic power required would undoubtedly be several levels higher. There's more, there's more. Don't think that the lowest grade D monster is weak. Pumpkin snickered mischievously. According to our settings, even if it's a D rank monster, it still has the strength to single-handedly defeat the elite magic shooters of your guild. As for C rank monsters, it will be doubled. As for B rank monsters, it will be doubled. Just like that, until S rank. If you aren't careful and die in the demon subduing hall, our guild won't be responsible. Pumpkin, the 8 magic shooters looked at each other, and many of them even had a solemn expression on their faces. Unlike yesterday and the day before, today's competition already had life-threatening factors. Moreover, the rules were quite complicated. Players would take turns to enter Demon Smiting Hall based on the order of the lots drawn. Before entering, players would also have to choose the number of monsters they needed to challenge, allowing the corresponding monsters to appear in Demon Smiting Hall. However, the monsters' levels were random. In addition, if one was knocked down during the challenge process, they would be eliminated. The challenge points of that round would also be reset to 0. Unless one had already entered the Demon Smiting Hall and successfully knocked down the number of monsters they had chosen to obtain points, otherwise, their points would be 0. In other words, if they were unlucky and encountered an S-rank monster in the first round and were defeated, then they would definitely be in 8th place. Unless the 8 contestants are defeated, they will take turns to enter Demon Smiting Hall until all 100 monsters in Demon Smiting Hall are defeated, or all 8 contestants are defeated and eliminated. Only then will it be considered over. Pumpkin suddenly pulled out a box. Then, let's start drawing lots now. Hearing that, the 8 contestants looked at each other, but none of them chose to step forward. Obviously, no one wanted to be the first to stand out. Seeing that everyone else was watching, Noah sighed and stepped forward. Since that's the case, then let me go first. Everyone's gaze immediately gathered on Noah. In front of everyone, Noah walked in front of Pumpkin. Looking at the box, he couldn't help but mutter in his heart. Now, I don't have any ability points anymore, and I've also lost the skill that increases luck. I wonder how my luck is now. Muttering this, Noah reached into the box and pulled out a lot. In the next moment, the corners of Noah's mouth lifted slightly. Looks like my luck isn't bad. On Noah's lot, there was a 1 written on it. Hey, hey, hey. Contestant Noah is the first challenger. Pumpkin hugged the box and walked in the direction of the other contestants. Next contestant, please draw lots. However, as soon as those words left his mouth, Noah suddenly spoke. No need to draw. Ha! Pumpkin's footsteps stopped. No need to draw. The others were stunned on the spot. Noah tossed aside the lot in his hand, raised his foot, and walked in the direction of Demon Subduing Hall as he spoke indifferently. Didn't I say that the competition would be over after all 100 monsters in the Demon Subduing Hall were defeated? Then there's no need to draw lots, right? At first, everyone had a confused expression. However, after a while, everyone immediately understood the meaning of Noah's words and opened their eyes wide. Before the challenge, I have to choose the number of monsters to challenge first, right? Noah didn't stop walking, but his voice echoed clearly in everyone's ears. In that case, all 100 monsters belong to me. After saying that, Noah walked into the dark divine hall called the Demon Subduing Hall under everyone's shocked gazes. About a minute later, kaboom! Amidst a deafening roar, the huge divine palace of darkness suddenly exploded, setting off an extremely terrifying burst of wind and flames. Mixed with debris, it swept across the entire venue. The audience could only stare blankly as the Demon Subduing Hall, which was as fragile as paper, exploded piece by piece. It turned into fragments and scattered all over the ground. Then, it disappeared under the blast of wind and flames without leaving a trace. The hat on their heads and the snacks in their hands were blown away by the blast of wind and waves. They didn't even have time to react. When everyone finally reacted, Noah's figure slowly appeared in the scorching blast of flames. He floated down from mid-air and landed on the ground. Noah raised his head and looked at the audience in a daze. He shrugged and said, "Don't worry, I won't be able to win." "What? Do you still want to continue?" The entire venue suddenly fell silent. "Oh!" In the next second, the cheers that resounded throughout the venue burst out like a huge wave. "Do you still want to continue?" "Of course, there's no need to continue." Even Chapati was ignited as he announced loudly with great excitement. Noah Doria won first place in the Demon Subduing Hall competition. Without a doubt, he's first place. The audience stood up one by one and couldn't stop cheering. They shouted until their veins were bulging, but they still didn't have any self-awareness. The cheers reverberated and shook the air in the entire venue. As for the other 7 contestants, they looked at each other in dismay and smiled bitterly at each other. "Really?" Alusha looked at Noah, who was standing in the center of the venue, and her eyes became extremely gentle. "I can't compare to that guy at all." Noah seemed to feel Alusha's gaze. He turned his head and waved his hand. Seeing this, Alusha's eyes became even gentler. The magic shooters from the other guilds also couldn't help but smile bitterly in the audience and contestant area. They also offered the highest level of applause to Noah. At this moment, there were only 2 people who were sincerely unhappy with Noah's performance. One was in the contestant area of Sabertooth. There, Migniba's face was gloomy, and even her eyes were full of hostility. The other was in the contestant area of Raventail. Alexei stared at Noah, who was bathed in the cheers of the audience. He clenched his fists and squeezed out an extremely resentful voice from under his mask. "Damn it! Why is that guy so strong?" At this moment, a black shadow appeared behind Alexei. "Who is it?" Alexei turned his head abruptly and looked behind him. Then, Alexei heard such an incomparably evil voice. "I'm the one who gave you hope." Chapter 1697. In the end, because of Noah's activity, the 3rd day of the Great Demonic Battle Arts exhibition turned into a one-man show. However, the points of the competition mainly came from the rankings. Even if Noah took on 100 monsters and won first place in the competition, the rest of the contestants still needed to determine who was better. However, even the kingdom could not continue to create 100 monsters in a short period of time for the contestants to challenge. Therefore, without any other choice, the organizers could only temporarily decide to use a small test to determine the rankings of the remaining 7 teams. The content of the test was based on the magic of each team sorcerer. The team with higher magic would be able to obtain a higher ranking. In the end, Noah won first place without any controversy. In the competition, the rankings of each team and the points they obtained, in order of highest to lowest, were as follows: Frowny Face Fairy Tale B Team, 10p. Lamia Scale, 8p. Fairy Tale A Team, 6p. Sabertooth, 4p. Mermaid Heel, 3p. Cotter Cerberus, 2p. Blue Pegasus, 1p. Raven Tail, 0p. After that, there were 4 more duels. The first duel, Mermaid Heel's Miriana vs Cotter Cerberus's Symes. Miriana won and obtained 10 points for Mermaid Heel. The second match was between Sabertooth's Lucifer and Blue Pegasus Ibu. Lucifer was victorious and earned 10 points for Sabertooth. The third duel, Laxus from Fairy Tale B Team vs Raventail's Aliax. Laxus won and obtained 10 points for Fairy Tale B Team. The fourth match was between Wendy from Fairy Tale A and Shalia from Lamia Scales. The 2 sides were tied, and each of them won 5 points for their respective teams. After 1 duel and 4 duels, each team's ranking had a small change. The changes were as follows. First place, Fairy Tale B Team, 44p. Second place, Fairy Tale A Team, 37p. Third place, Sabertooth, 34p. Fourth place, Mermaid Heel, 30p. Fifth place, Lamia Scale, 25p. Sixth place, Raven Tail, 24p. Seventh place, Blue Pegasus, 16p. Eighth place, Cotter Cerberus, 12p. At this point, the third day of the Great Demon Battle exhibition had smoothly ended. Fairy Tail's two teams had successfully maintained their position as the top two teams. Especially Team B, there was a 10-point gap between them and the third-place team, Sabertooth. If Sabertooth wanted to chase after him, he would have to put in a lot of effort. No matter what, today was still Fairy Tail's victory. A group of Fairy Tail sorcerers were chatting and laughing as they walked out of the giant egg. They walked towards the direction of the hotel. At the back of the group, Noah lowered his head and fell into deep thought. His eyebrows were tightly knitted. Mira, who was keenly aware of Noah's abnormality, hugged Noah's arm and gently said, "What are you thinking about?" Hearing this, Noah did not hide anything and directly said it. "I'm thinking about the Raven Tail." With this, his companions who were chatting and laughing around him also quieted down. It wasn't strange for everyone to have such a reaction. The reason was actually very simple. It was because Raven Tail did something that puzzled everyone. Laxus narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "Are you thinking about why those guys directly forfeited in the competition?" This was the reason why Noah fell into deep thought. Today, Raven Tail's performance was too abnormal. Whether it was in the competition or the duel, Raven Tail's contestants directly forfeited and did not get any points. As a result, Raven Tail naturally fell from third place to sixth place. This behavior was too abnormal. Originally, Noah did not care about Raven Tail at all. During the Great Demonic Combat Arts competition, he let them do whatever they wanted. Because, in Noah's opinion, Ivan's tricks were too childish and ridiculous. Once Ivan made a move, Noah only had to take care of him, and this guild with bad intentions would be doomed eternally. But today, Raven Tail actually forfeited twice without hesitation, which made Noah a little suspicious. "I have a feeling," Noah said in a low voice. "Ivan might be planning to make a move." The atmosphere suddenly became heavy. His companions all gathered around Noah, and even their footsteps stopped. "Could it be just your imagination?" Gray said. "It's just forfeiting. Maybe those guys feel that they have no chance of winning." "Winning isn't important to those guys at all." Noah shook his head. "Those fellows' true target is us, or rather, our guild. To them, the Great Demon Martial Arts Exhibition is just a stage for them to achieve their goal. They've been targeting us since the beginning, so the results of the competition don't matter at all." "Then, in your opinion, those guys forfeited twice on this stage. What are they planning to do?" Elusha asked. "Could it be that they want to make a move outside the competition?" "That's very likely." Noah nodded and looked around. "In short, I feel that something is wrong. Everyone be careful, no matter what, do not act alone." "Understood." Everyone nodded in unison. Seeing Noah being surrounded by his companions and giving orders to his companions, and the companions around him carrying out Noah's orders from the bottom of their hearts, Xuanai felt a strange feeling in her heart. This feeling was completely different from when she was in Sabertooth. In that place, the relationship between the guild leader and the members was only that of a superior and subordinate, and even the relationship between the ruler and the ruled, there was not the slightest bit of affection to speak of. In that kind of guild, Xuanai could only feel the cold order and prestige. But here, Xuanai could feel waves of warmth. Because, here, the guild leader's every order was for the safety of the guild members. And the guild members' obedience was also due to their trust in the guild leader. Thus, Xuanai once again realized. Being able to join a guild like Fairy Tail was simply too good. Chapter 1698. The sky gradually darkened. After returning to the hotel, the group of people from Fairy Tale feasted and drank like they had done for the past 2 days. Then, those who had left halfway returned to their own residences. Before the start of the Great Demonic Combat Arts competition, the organizers had allocated the participating teams of each guild to the various inns in Colocus. The inns allocated to the participating teams were of different sizes according to the guild. For example, Sabertooth, because they were the previous first place, the inns allocated to them were of a larger scale and could accommodate all the members of the guild. This allowed all the sorcerers of Sabertooth to stay together. Unlike Sabertooth, Fairy Tale had always been the last in the previous competitions. Therefore, the place allocated to Fairy Tale was only one of the rooms in the inn. Of course, not only did the sorcerers of Fairy Tale not stay in the same inn as the contestants, but even Team A and Team B stayed in different inns. Therefore, after the members left the banquet, they could only go their separate ways and return to their respective residences. However, under Noah's instructions, everyone was prepared to leave in groups and ensure their safety. Thus, Mira, Shue, and Lisanna left the banquet together. On the way, Lisanna said apologetically to Mira and Shue, "I'm sorry, Sister Mira, Shue, I had to ask you to send me off." Originally, Makarov had already rented an inn for the members of Fairy Tale who did not participate in the competition to stay together. However, those fellows were either still causing trouble at the banquet or had already left. The timing of Lisanna's departure was completely different. At first, Lisanna had planned to wait for them to enjoy themselves before returning together. However, after knowing that Lisanna was planning to leave, Mira and Shue volunteered to send Lisanna back to the inn. "Well, I didn't plan to stay for too long anyway." Mira smiled indifferently. "Besides, I'm worried about you. This is just a coincidence. Lord Noah said that the guild called Raventail will most likely attack us outside the arena." Snow added. "That's why it's safer for us to move together." "But our hotel isn't in the same direction," Lisanna said helplessly. "Otherwise, we wouldn't have to go through so much trouble." The banquet was held at the bar on the first floor of the hotel where Fairy Tale B was assigned to. In light of this, after Mira and Snow sent Lisanna back to her residence, they still had to return to their own hotel. This meant that Mira and Snow were purposely taking a detour. It was because of this that Lisanna apologized. "Just like what Shue and I said, it's safer to move together," Mira said gently. "If something were to happen to you, not only me, but Noah would also be very worried. It would be best if we could avoid an accident with just a little trouble. Moreover, I wouldn't find it troublesome at all." Snow lowered her head and said embarrassedly, "I've never tried using my own power to protect my companions. Now that I'm doing this, I'm actually a little happy." Hearing that, Mira and Lisanna exchanged glances and smiled in unison. "Then I'll have to trouble you, Shue and I." Lisanna held Shue and I's hand. "Shue and I is so powerful, she's really reliable. I feel very safe with Shue and I." Mira held Shue and I's other hand. "If the three of us are together, with Raventail as our opponent, there shouldn't be a problem." Noah said that in terms of strength, even in Fairy Tale, which was famous for its strict requirements for S-rank sorcerers, Shue and I had the qualifications to become an S-rank sorcerer and was qualified to be in the top 10 of the guild. As for Mira, she was an active S-rank sorcerer and was second only to Noah, Kildas, Laxus, and Alusha in the guild. She could be ranked in the top 5 of the guild. With Mira and Shue and I's escort, Lisanna's safety would be guaranteed. After all, in Raventail, even the guild leader, Ivan, didn't have the ability to hurt Mira and Shue and I working together. Moreover, Lisanna's strength wasn't weak and wasn't far from the frontline combat members of the guild. This way, with the Raventail's ability, it was not enough to hurt the three of them. Of course, the prerequisite was that the opponent only had a Raventail. With Mira and Lisanna holding each of her hands, Shue and I, who was more or less in fear and trepidation, inadvertently caught a glimpse of the scene in front of her. The expression on her pretty face slightly froze and she abruptly stopped and raised her voice. "Lord Mira. Lord Lisanna." Mira and Lisanna were slightly startled by Shuanai's sudden stop and immediately felt that something was wrong. They abruptly turned their heads and looked forward. In the next moment, the three girls saw it at the same time. They didn't know when, but on the huge street, there wasn't a single person. Moreover, even the surrounding street lights suddenly dimmed and lost their light. Under such circumstances, a black fog like a whirlpool kept spinning in front of them, emitting waves of evil aura. The evil aura made Mira, who had the power of the demon in her body, feel a burst of vigilance. She couldn't help but stand in front of Lisanna and stare forward while speaking in a deep voice. "Who?" The black fog that was spinning like a whirlpool suddenly stopped. In the next moment, the black fog suddenly exploded and turned into a black wave that surged out. Mira, Lisanna, and Shuanai were all shocked. They only had time to do this before the thick black fog surged in front of the three girls. At this critical moment, the only one who reacted was Mira. "Danger!" Mira quickly reached out and pushed Shuanai and Lisanna away at the same time. The surging black fog was like a rolling wave, covering Mira and swallowing her. Shuanai and Lisanna, who were pushed away by Mira, fell to the ground. Looking at Mira, who was swallowed by the black fog, they both exclaimed in shock. "Sister Mira! Lord Mira!" Almost at the same time, a small black shadow scurried from behind the two girls and directly rushed toward Lisanna. "Whing!" Along with a soft trembling sound, Lisanna, who was about to get up and rush into the black fog to save Mira, suddenly felt a tremor all over her body. Then, the mana in her body actually disappeared in a moment, leaving not a trace. Immediately, Lisanna lost all her strength. Lisanna only felt her vision suddenly spin before her body swayed and she fell unconscious. "Lord Lisanna!" Shuanai panicked and hurriedly hugged the fallen Lisanna. Looking at the unconscious girl, she gritted her teeth and glared at the black fog in front of her. "Who? Who is it?" In the rolling black fog in front of her, a sinister laughter rang out. Then, the words entered Shuanai's ears. "What? Don't you recognize me?" As soon as the voice fell, a figure slowly walked out of the thick black fog and entered Shuanai's vision. The newcomer had long hair that was half black and half gray, and it was tied up and hung behind his back. It was the sinister man who had appeared in Yufatsue's room in the palace. The sinister man looked at Shuanai and the corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "Long time no see, Shuanai." Looking at the man full of evil aura, Shuanai first stared at him. In the next second, her eyes suddenly widened as she muttered in disbelief. "You? Could you be?" The sinister man revealed a sinister smile. Chapter 1699. On the other side, in the fairy tale hotel, many of his companions were still there. They continued to eat and drink as much as they could while making a ruckus. Some of the residents living in the neighboring hotel started to complain. Noah was at the bar with Makarov, discussing with Makarov about some of today's discoveries, such as the fact that the person behind the scenes absorbing the mana of the high mages participating in the great magic wars was most likely the kingdom, as well as the abnormal behavior of Raventail and so on. Makarov seemed to be attaching great importance to these two matters, but he didn't manage to find out anything. In front of Noah, he put on a distressed expression. Looking at the distressed Makarov, Noah could only helplessly help. After all, Makarov kept saying that he was going to retire, but when it came to matters related to the guild, he wouldn't give up without getting to the bottom of it. Noah originally intended to solve these two matters himself, but because he couldn't resist Makarov's questioning, he could only use the excuse of discussing the matter with this worrisome old president. And obviously, even Noah had just found some clues, so Makarov didn't know what to do. Thus, Makarov could only be distressed, making Noah laugh. At this time, Noah suddenly felt a familiar mana fluctuation. Feeling that familiar mana fluctuation, Noah's expression slightly froze, and he suddenly stood up. Noah's action instantly attracted the attention of everyone present. Seeing Noah suddenly stand up with an unsightly expression, Makarov immediately asked, "What's wrong?" "I felt Myra's mana." Noah directly walked out of the bar, leaving this sentence behind as he quickly walked out. "Mira is fighting now, she might have encountered an attack." While leaving this sentence, Noah also walked out of the inn. His figure directly soared into the sky, turning into a stream of light, and shot in the direction of the familiar mana fluctuation he sensed. It was only then that the group of magic shooters from Fairy Tale came to their senses. They were all shocked, and rushed out of the inn in unison. They rushed in the direction that Noah was flying at as fast as they could. Whoosh! In the starry night sky, a stream of light was like a meteor streaking across the sky, shooting straight in the direction of Crocus. His dark and deep eyes were like those of an owl, flashing with a somewhat cold expression while constantly scanning the surroundings. Following the familiar mana fluctuation that he sensed, Noah quickly arrived above a dark street. Then, Noah saw it. On the street below, a black swamp-like fog was violently spinning like a vortex, repeatedly releasing an evil aura. In the constantly spinning black fog, Mira, who had received Satan's soul, was agitated with surging mana. She had a slightly uncomfortable expression on her face, as if she had fallen into a swamp and was struggling with difficulty. Beside her, Lysana seemed to have fainted and was lying there. Seeing this, Noah more or less guessed the situation. There was no doubt that Mira and her party had been attacked. Moreover, the attacker's strength was very high, binding Mira and making it difficult for her to move. As for Lysana, although he didn't know what had happened to her, there wasn't any change in her aura. It seemed that she had just fainted. These speculations appeared in Noah's mind in an instant. After a moment, Noah's eyes turned sharp, and he suddenly stretched out a hand, aiming at the thick black fog below. Clang! A blue magic array spun out in front of Noah's palm, like a turret, and aimed downward, gathering mana. Hum! In the next moment, the blue magic array trembled, and the mana gathered in it turned into a beam of light that shot out toward the pitch-black fog below. Bang! The dazzling beam of mana collided with the black swamp-like fog, causing a muffled explosion. Then, as if canceling each other out, they both exploded, turning into white and black spots, dissipating into the air. It was only then that Mira seemed to have been released. Her body became light, and after staggering a few steps, she turned her head, looked in Lysana's direction, and rushed over. A dazzling light bloomed from Mira's body, allowing her to release herself from receiving Satan's soul and rush to Lysana's side. At this moment, Noah had already descended from the sky. He picked up Lysana, checked her condition, and breathed a sigh of relief. Lysana! Mira hugged her as well, looking at Noah anxiously. How's Lysana? Don't worry, she's fine. Noah grabbed Mira's hand and looked into her eyes, indicating for her to calm down. She's just fainted because she's exhausted too much mana. She'll wake up when she recovers some mana. Is that so? Mira was relieved, and she breathed a huge sigh of relief. That's great. What's going on? Noah asked Mira as he hugged Lysana. And, where's Shuanai? We were ambushed. Mira bit her lip lightly. Shuanai seems to have been taken away. Noah's expression darkened. So they were ambushed. The ambusher shouldn't be Raventail, right? Noah asked calmly. At the very least, I don't think Raventail has the ability to bind you and take Shuanai away. I don't know who the ambusher is either. I was trapped by the black mist as soon as we were ambushed, and I don't know what's going on outside. I can only vaguely hear Shuanai calling out Lasana's name, and she seems to be talking to someone. Mira said unwillingly. Then, she seemed to have thought of something. She raised her eyes and looked at Noah. But the ambusher left me a message. If you want to find Shuanai, you have to go to the outskirts of Crocus alone. You can't bring anyone with you. In other words, the ambusher's target wasn't Mira, Lisana, or Shuanai, but Noah. Mira clearly understood that, and her eyes were filled with worry as she looked at Noah. However, Mira didn't say anything and remained silent. She held Noah's hand tighter and tighter. Feeling the strength of Mira's hand, Noah immediately held it back and smiled at Mira. Don't worry, even a Conaraglia can't do anything to me. How can an ambusher who only knows how to sneak around do anything to me? In a single sentence, Noah's plan was completely revealed. Mira didn't say anything and only held Noah's hand tightly, revealing her usual gentle and sweet smile. Yes, I believe you. Noah nodded and placed Lisana in Mira's arms. Then, he hugged Mira as well. Grandpa and Alusha should be on their way here now. They'll be here soon, Noah instructed. Tell them not to act rashly for the time being. Leave everything here to me. If I'm not back by tomorrow, let Connor replace me with a substitute member. Shu and I didn't fight today, and the substitute member of Squad B hasn't been confirmed yet, so there shouldn't be a problem. I know. Just leave the Great Demon Battle exhibition to us. You've already won a lot of advantages for us. We'll definitely win, Mira said softly as she snuggled in Noah's arms. Remember to bring Shu and I back. Noah kissed Myra's forehead and then Lasana's forehead before getting up. Under Myra's gaze, he turned into a streak of light and shot into the sky, flying out of the city. Looking at Noah's gradually disappearing figure, Mira hugged Lisana tightly and murmured softly. Come back soon. Chapter 1700. The night gradually deepened. Some cold wind slowly blew across the land, causing the flowers and trees on the outskirts of Carlocus to sway, giving off a very tranquil feeling. In the sky, dark clouds began to appear, covering the moonlight. For a moment, darkness swallowed the entire land, causing the light to become extremely dim. At a certain moment, in Carlocus, where there was still sufficient light, a stream of light flew out, streaking across the night sky at an extremely fast speed, and landed on the outskirts. Noah slowly stepped forward and looked around. Whoosh! The cold wind seemed to have not noticed that the atmosphere had begun to become tense, and continued to blow across the land and the outskirts, causing Noah's robe to flutter. Noah slightly closed his eyes against the cold wind, then suddenly opened them, looked in one direction, and said straightforwardly, Stop fooling around. Enough with your mystifying tricks. It's time to come out, right? The whole place was silent. The silence seemed to be mocking Noah's words, silently telling him that there was no one here. It continued to spread in the air. Noah just quietly looked in that direction, without saying anything, and without doing anything, as if he was not anxious at all, maintaining his silence. Maintaining this strange state, it was not until 5 minutes later that a clear sound of speechlessness was heard. Immediately, in the direction Noah was looking, several figures began to slowly appear, and walked towards him. Looking at the group of people slowly approaching, Noah's eyes narrowed slightly. There were a total of 5 people. The leader of the group was a man clad in resplendent golden armor. Surprisingly, it was the Raven-tail, Alexei. Behind Alexei, 4 people stood in a row, as if Alexei was their leader. They followed Alexei and walked over. The 4 people's appearances were very distinct. One of them was a short, fat man who looked very annoying. One of them was a young girl with eye-catching long red hair that was tied into 2 braids. She was dressed in a red dress. The other was a clown dressed like a magician, but on his back stood a dark brown little person. The last one was a man with black eyeshadow and black lipstick, with a face like a snake, giving off a gloomy feeling. The 4 people were all members of the Raven Tail. Including Alexei, the 5 people were the Raven Tail participants in the Great Demon Combat Arts competition. Noah more or less remembered the information about these people. The short fatty was called Narabutinku, and the magic he used was called Needle Explosion, which was a kind of magic that could make the arm full of needles and strengthen it, and its destructive power was comparable to that of an explosion. On the first day of the Great Demon Combat Arts competition, he was the one who appeared with Gray and Julian. The girl with crimson hair was called Freya, and the spell she used was called Crimson Hair. It was a spell that allowed her to freely manipulate her hair, making it longer or shorter at will. She could even make her hair as hot as fire to attack. She was Lucy's opponent on the first day of the Great Demonic Combat Tournament. The clown dressed like a magician was called Obra, and the magic he used was ominous, which had not been shown so far. He appeared in today's competition, but after Noah finished challenging the demon-subduing Hall, he directly forfeited, which was very mysterious. The man who looked as gloomy as a snake was called Black Snake, and the magic he used was called mimicry, which was a kind of magic that could change himself into other forms and manipulate them. Black Snake's mimicry target was sand, so he could freely turn into sand and manipulate the sand he transformed into. As for Alexei, his specific strength was unknown, his specific magic was unknown, and even his specific appearance and specific background were unknown. Today, he was chosen to duel with Laxus, but just like Obra, he directly forfeited. To others, Alexei was very mysterious, even more mysterious than Obra. However, to Noah, Alexei's so-called mystery was just a joke. At this point, are you still going to hide? Noah glanced at Alexei and said with a smile. Ivan Doria. Alexei's footsteps suddenly froze, and he stopped. However, Noah could imagine. Alexei's face under the mask, at this time, was very ugly. Under such circumstances, Noah said as if he was talking to himself. If you want to hide, then at least use some decent means, such as directly using transformation magic to change into other people's appearance, and then use a magic tool to hide your own aura, to eliminate your own aura, that is called perfect. Wearing a set of broken armor and a broken mask, you can also hide your identity and participate in the Great Demonic Arts competition. Does the kingdom really intend to not let people violate the rules? The Great Demonic Arts competition that determined the guild ranking every year. It was a ceremony that every guild in the Fiori Kingdom could participate in. However, if you want to participate in this ceremony, you have to at least abide by 2 basic rules. 1. You must have the guild's coat of arms, and can only appear as a sorcerer of the guild. 2. The participant can't be the guild leader. Not abiding by the above 2 points is a violation of the rules. Alexei had blatantly violated the second rule. As early as during the preliminaries, Noah had already discovered this guy's true identity and underhanded means. Ivan had already attacked Noah and exposed his aura under Noah's sensing ability. When he appeared again, even if he covered his face and did not hide his aura, how could he hide from Noah? Therefore, Noah thought that the so-called Raven Tail was just a group of clowns. Seeing that his true identity was exposed as soon as he appeared, Alexei. No, it should be Ivan. After a moment of silence, he reached out his hand and took off the mask on his face. He stared at Noah with a gloomy expression and smiled coldly. No wonder you dare to say that humans can't be compared to you, you are indeed difficult to deal with. Whether I am difficult to deal with or not, until now you only know. Noah curled his lips. If that's the case, then I have really overestimated you. After that, Noah did not give Ivan any chance to reply and went straight to the point. You took the initiative to give up on the great magic battles today for this, right? Let the guy who instigated you come out. Ivan's expression stiffened when he heard this, but he still put on an act and said. What instigated me? I don't understand what you are talking about. As soon as Ivan finished his sentence, he immediately noticed that Noah was looking at him with a disdainful gaze. Are you trying to say that you were able to successfully attack Mira, Snow, and Lysana all because of the strength of your raven tail? Noah said sarcastically. If that's the case, then I will honestly admit that I have underestimated your strength. The group of Raventail's magic shooters immediately showed anger on their faces. Noah's words were obviously looking down on them. Don't be too proud, little brat. Little brat. Ivan couldn't help but get angry and roared at Noah. Don't forget. We are in charge now. The person you want is in my hands. Then tell me where Snow is. Noah looked coldly at Ivan. I don't have much time to play games with you. Play games. Ivan's eyes widened slightly as he flew into a rage. You actually said that the plan that I have been plotting for so long is a game. Plotting. Noah looked away and said in a tone that made Ivan extremely angry. Forget it, I can't be bothered to waste time on you. As soon as he finished speaking, Noah suddenly shot out without any warning and appeared in front of Ivan at an astonishing speed. Whoa! Ivan's expression changed drastically. However, before Ivan could react, Noah suddenly reached out and grabbed him by the neck, lifting him up and hanging him in the air. The group of Raventail's magic shooters were all shocked. In the next moment, a terrifying burst of mana rose from Noah's body. Chapter 1701. Boom! The terrifying mana that surged from Noah's body directly turned into a substantial shockwave that violently vibrated and sent the Raventail magic shooters that surrounded Ivan flying. The Raventail magic shooters that were sent flying did not even have time to scream before they crashed heavily onto the ground. The screams that reached their mouths turned into muffled groans as they fell to the ground and wailed incessantly. Purely by releasing his mana, Noah did not make a move at all, and the Raventail magic shooters had all fallen around him. Ivan, whose neck was being choked by Noah, had a change of expression on his face. But soon after, he was attacked by a sense of suffocation and let out an inaudible wail. Noah stared coldly at Ivan, who was struggling with all his might as his face gradually turned purple. He tightened his grip on Ivan's neck bit by bit, causing Ivan's feet that were lifted off the ground to thrash about wildly. However, Noah still tightened his grip on Ivan's neck bit by bit, causing Ivan's struggle to become weaker and weaker. Finally, his hands drooped down, and his eyes began to roll back. He looked like he was about to breathe in and out. It was only then that Noah released his grip on Ivan's neck, and let Ivan fall to the ground with gravity. Cough, cough, cough. Ivan immediately covered his neck and coughed uncontrollably, as though he had just drowned and was gasping for air. You. Ivan looked up, panting wretchedly as he stared at Noah in disbelief, and opened his mouth in disbelief. How dare you do this to me? No matter what, Ivan had a hostage in his hands. It was because of this hostage that Ivan dared to bring his men and appear in front of Noah in an upright manner. Of course, it was not right to say that he was upright. In the beginning, Ivan was still hiding in the dark and looking for an opportunity to sneak an attack on Noah. He planned to take down Noah first to increase his chances of success. However, because he was discovered by Noah, Ivan's plan could only be declared a failure. However, Ivan was not afraid because he had a hostage in his hands. After he was discovered, he came out directly. Originally, in Ivan's imagination, Noah should now be humble and even kneel down to beg for mercy. Then, he would raise the condition for Noah to exchange Lumen Starlight for Shuanai. Ivan never thought that this script would go wrong from the beginning. Noah actually attacked Raventail without any scruples when Ivan had a hostage in his hands. Was he not afraid that something would happen to the hostage? Looking at the look of disbelief on Ivan's face, Noah seemed to have seen through his puzzlement and sneered. That's right, I do want to find Shuanai, but not to the extent of being threatened by you. Anyway, I've already confirmed that there is at least one mastermind behind you. Moreover, you don't seem to be in cahoots, but are just using each other. In that case, I'll just talk to that guy directly. I don't need to get any clues from you. Do you understand what I mean? Noah bent down and looked at Ivan condescendingly as he said sarcastically. In other words, you're completely useless. You're just being used as a pawn to die, idiot. After saying that, Noah raised a hand directly at Ivan. A magical circle suddenly spun out from Noah's palm and aimed at Ivan, who was paralyzed on the ground, gathering mana within. Wait! Wait! Ivan screamed in horror. You can't kill me. You can't kill me. Ignoring Ivan's screams, Noah's eyes didn't carry any emotions at all. The magical circle aimed at Ivan continued to gather mana, causing the magical circle to gradually emit a bright light. At this moment, an unprecedented shadow of death began to spread in Ivan's heart. Thus, Ivan understood. Noah really intended to kill him. I've told you before, haven't I? Noah looked straight at Ivan, his eyes revealing a cold emotion. If I have the chance, I'll definitely kill you. The magical circle aimed at Ivan became brighter and brighter. Sensing the impending death, Ivan roared with his eyes bulging out of their sockets. Abra! Quick! Eliminate his mana! Suddenly, the dark brown figure on the body of Abra, who had fallen to the ground, violently shot out like a bullet towards Noah's direction. At the same time, the clown who was dressed like a magician collapsed and turned into a pile of clothes. That Abra was actually just a dummy. Squeak squeak. The dark brown figure let out an animal-like cry with a treacherous smile on his face. He suddenly pounced on Noah and grabbed his shoulder tightly. Clang! In the next second, a magical circle lit up on the body of the dark brown figure. No one knew that Abra had the ability to eliminate the mana of any individual or even any target. If the target of this elimination magic was an individual, then all the mana in their body would be wiped clean in an instant. Therefore, Abra's magic had always been Ivan's trump card. Unfortunately, Ivan chose the wrong target to use it on. Whing! Accompanied by a trembling sound, a terrifying amount of mana was constantly released from Noah's body. Under the effect of Abra's elimination magic, it was being consumed at a terrifying speed. However, Noah did not resist at all under such a terrifying consumption. He glanced at the little dark brown figure on his shoulder, and his eyes were full of mockery. It was as if he did not care about the terrifying consumption of mana at all, and his expression remained calm from the beginning to the end. The treacherous smile on the figure's face froze. Ivan's expression became interesting all of a sudden. In the next instant, a hand suddenly reached out and grabbed the small dark brown figure, squeezing it tightly in the palm of his hand. I see. You're the real Abra. That clown is just an illusion. Noah stared at the shocked figure in his hand with a cold glint in his eyes. The magic that can eliminate mana. You're the one who did it to her, aren't you? There was finally a hint of anger in Noah's tone, and a surge of magic power surged in his hand that was holding the little dark brown figure. Bam! With a muffled sound, Noah fiercely clenched his fist, and the palm that was filled with surging magic power immediately crushed the dark brown dwarf. Blood splashed out and sprinkled on Ivan's face. Ah! Ivan let out a heart-wrenching scream. He wasn't grieving because of Abra's death. Instead, it was because Abra's death caused the shadow of death in his heart to explode. Then, the mana that gathered in the magic array in front of Noah's hand suddenly turned into a flash of light that instantly covered Ivan's entire body, causing him to be gradually annihilated in the beam of mana amidst his heart-wrenching screams. His body was smashed into pieces, leaving no trace behind. After the beam of mana that shot out from the magic array destroyed Ivan, it still streaked across the space without slowing down and landed on the terrified Nerapidinku and the Black Serpent, annihilating the two rather outstanding magic shooters into nothingness. In the end, the beam of mana that shot out rubbed against the air and shot into the distance, disappearing at the other end of the horizon. Ivan, Nerapidinku, the Black Serpent, and Abra were all dead. Only Freya was left. She sat there with a dull expression, as if she had lost her mind. She didn't react for a long time. Ignoring Freya's reaction, Noah retracted all the magic in his body, turned around, and looked in another direction. "All right, you've seen enough of the show. It's time to come out, right?" As soon as he said this, a round of applause rang out. To be able to kill the person holding the hostage without batting an eyelid. Should I say, as expected of an existence that dares to claim that humans can't be compared to you? A thick black fog suddenly rose and turned into a devilish man that appeared in front of Noah. Chapter 1702. Whoosh. No one knew when it started, but the cold wind started to blow again, blowing across the land and the suburbs. Noah and the evil man looked at each other. One's eyes were full of judgment, the other's eyes were full of evil. Both of them were silent, and no one spoke at the first moment. Not long after, Noah spoke indifferently. "Who are you?" "Me." The evil man shrugged and said so. "You can call me Luo." "Luo?" Noah frowned. For some reason, Noah felt that this guy who called himself Luo seemed to be strange. No, not strange, but his existence itself seemed to have some kind of inconsistency, as if there was a feeling of gears that couldn't be bitten, which made people feel very uncomfortable. Under such circumstances, Noah even had an illusion. He seemed to know the other party, but also seemed to not know the other party. It was an indescribable illusion. Feeling that clear illusion, Noah's frown deepened. Noah, who couldn't get rid of this illusion, simply asked directly, "Where is Xuanai?" Hearing this, the evil man who called himself Luo suddenly smiled. "Don't worry, Xuanai is very safe now. I've arranged for her to be in a place where no one can touch her. As long as you agree to my request, I'll immediately tell you her whereabouts." "Request?" Noah narrowed his eyes and curled his lips. "Fine. Let me hear what you're planning to ask for by attacking my companions." Hearing Noah's sarcastic words, Luo smiled helplessly. "You don't need to be angry, and you don't need to be hostile to me. My request is actually very simple for you. I just feel that if I don't have any bargaining chips, you wouldn't agree, so I let Xuanai come with me. I'm very sincere." Luo said as if he was implying something. "Look, I only took Xuanai away and didn't do anything to your two fiancés, right? Let me make it clear, the one who attacked the girl named Lisanna was not me, but the guy from Raven Tail." Law glanced at Freya, an evil and vicious smile appearing on his face. "If you are not comfortable with this, I can help you get rid of the rest of the trash." Freya's face was instantly filled with fear. She maintained her paralyzed posture on the ground as she shuffled her body backward, shaking her head continuously. Don't kill me, don't kill me." Obviously, the girl named Freya was scared out of her wits. "Okay, just tell us what you're here for." Noah stared at Law. "What is your purpose?" "My purpose is actually very simple." Law met Noah's gaze, and although the evil smile on his face did not change, the look in his eyes changed. "Noah Dole, you can no longer participate in the next Great Demonic Combat Arts competition. As long as you agree to my condition, I will take you to see Xuanai immediately. Don't participate in the Great Demonic Combat Arts competition." Noah was stunned. "Yes. Don't participate in the Great Demonic Combat Arts competition." Law stared at Noah tightly and said this half-jokingly. Didn't you claim to be an existence that humans cannot be compared to? Then what is the point of competing with a group of weak humans? Can't you just leave the rest of your companions in the guild to do the rest of the things? Or do you have no confidence in your companions? Before, although Law's voice was full of evil charm, Noah did not feel much emotion from it. However, at this moment, Law's words carried some emotion, which surprised Noah a little. At this moment, Noah rolled his eyes and asked, "Why do you go through so much trouble to get me to withdraw from the Great Demonic Combat Arts competition? Could it be that you think I'm a threat to the victory of any team?" "Humph," Law snorted. "The outcome of the Great Demonic Combat Arts competition has been decided at the beginning, as long as you don't participate." Law's firm tone made Noah puzzled. The outcome of the Great Demonic Combat Arts competition has been decided at the beginning. What does this mean? Also, as long as Noah doesn't participate, the result will not change. Why is Law so sure? For a moment, thousands of thoughts flashed through Noah's mind. However, even though there were many doubts, there was one thing that could be confirmed. That is, if Noah continues to participate in the Great Demonic Combat Arts competition, it will definitely cause some kind of obstacle to the guy in front of him who calls himself Law. Because of this, Law did not hesitate to kidnap Xuanai and use this to make Noah compromise. However, it can be seen that Law is very afraid of Noah. Whether it was the power or the existence itself, Noah made Law feel a very strong fear and even vigilance. Therefore, Law also did not dare to completely provoke Noah. He just took Xuanai away and did not do anything to Mira and Lisanna. If Law had done something to Mira and Lisanna, at this time, Noah may have already gone berserk and blasted him to pieces, right? It is because of this that Law did not completely offend Noah. As for the Raven Tail, it is purely a prop used by Law to test Noah's reaction. Law wants to see how Noah will treat the Raven Tail when Obra of the Raven Tail eliminates all of Lisanna's magic and causes her to faint. If Noah chooses to compromise with the Raven Tail, then Law will not talk to Noah so nicely as he is now, and he will definitely use Xuanai to threaten Noah. Unfortunately, Noah had annihilated all the members of Raven Tail except for Freya, especially Obra, who had eliminated Lisanna's magic power. He had crushed her to death without leaving any room for negotiation. In this way, Law does not dare to easily anger Noah. Because that is not good for Noah and Law. Thinking of this, Noah asked abruptly, "What's in it for you if I don't participate in the Great Demonic Combat Arts competition?" Law was silent for a moment. Noah was not in a hurry, he just looked straight at Law, quietly waiting for his reaction. After a while, Law grinned and looked up at Noah. "Well, if you really want to know everything, I can tell you everything, including the purpose of the existence of the Great Demonic Combat Arts competition." Hearing this sentence, Noah's eyes suddenly flashed. "So that's how it is," Noah said very calmly. "It seems that you know what is going on with the phenomenon of magic being absorbed from the sorcerers one by one during the Great Demonic Combat Arts competition. Have you noticed?" Law said indifferently. "It's just that it doesn't matter now. By this year's Great Demonic Combat Arts competition, the magic needed for the Eclipse Plan has been gathered." "Eclipse Plan?" Noah asked. "What's that? Do you want to know?" Lowell raised his eyebrows, and after a while, said to Noah, "If you want to know, then agree to my request. In that case, after the Great Demonic Combat Arts competition is over, I will tell you everything." Hearing this, Noah understood. Luo would not reveal anything else. "Let me remind you first, don't use the Raven Tail method on me," Law said as if he was on guard against something. "If you intend to take me directly and ask me about the whereabouts of Xuanai and all the information about the Eclipse Plan, then I won't tell you even if I kill myself." Law's expression became extremely cold. It was not coldness toward Noah, nor was it coldness toward anyone else. It was coldness toward oneself. Then, Law said this sentence. Don't think I can't do it. The eclipse plan is everything for me now. If it fails, then I might as well die. So, believe me, I can definitely do it. This time, it was Noah's turn to be silent. After a long time, Noah lifted his feet and walked in the direction of Law. Law's whole body tensed up. However, Noah did not do anything to Law, but directly passed him, back to back with Law, and spoke lightly. Well, let me see what you are going to do. Law's eyes lit up, and the evil smile returned to his face. In this year's Great Magic Battle Arts competition, the so-called elites of the Magic Guide Guild, who can match those two people, can be counted on one hand, not to mention Lax's Dole of the Thunder Dragon, your brother. I'm afraid his strength is close to that of Jula of the Rock Iron, right? Noah nodded non-committally, but in his heart, he agreed with Law's words. The Dragon Slayer magic is indeed quite powerful. At least, from the perspective of the field of magic, there are very few magic that can be compared to it, except for super magic. After learning this kind of magic, not to mention Naz, Gadjaloo, and Lax's, even Wendy, who is only 14 years old, already has a certain degree of power, much stronger than the average mage. It is conceivable that the power of the Dragon Slayer magic is indeed much stronger than ordinary magic. If you think about it carefully, you can actually understand. There are so many guilds in the Fiori Kingdom, and Fairy Tail and Saber-Tooth were both known as the strongest guilds in the Fiori Kingdom for a period of time, above the rest of the guilds in the kingdom. Such two guilds must have gathered a lot of elites, and there must be a lot of excellent mages. However, even so, in the two guilds, the position of the Dragon Slayer Archmage had always been high. He either occupied the position of a frontline combat member or was simply the strongest Archmage in the guild. This was enough to explain everything. However, human beings are very greedy creatures. Although the dragons of the Coexistence faction found that human beings have rich emotions and were attracted by this, they did not find that it is precisely because of the existence of rich emotions that there is darkness in the hearts of human beings that the dragons cannot match. Law seemed to be ridiculing the stupidity of the dragons of the Coexistence faction, and as if he was showing contempt for human beings, he spoke sarcastically. So, the desire of human beings who got power from the dragons also began to expand. When the victory of the Coexistence faction was in sight, even those dragons who wanted to coexist with human beings were killed. At this point, Law's tone became dignified. And among that group, a man used the Dragon Slayer magic to eliminate a large number of dragons, and finally, he grew scales and fangs, and gradually became a dragon. A human turned into a dragon. Noah stood up in surprise. In this regard, Law gave a positive answer. That's right. That person turned into a dragon. You can treat it as a side effect of the Dragon Slayer magic, or as a mutation caused by slaughtering a large number of dragons. No one knows what the real situation is. I only know that the sleeping dragons here all died at the hands of that man. Noah's brows wrinkled tightly. Staring straight at Law's back, Noah was silent for a while, and then asked word by word. That man, who is he? Law stopped in his tracks. In the next second, Law slowly turned around and looked at Noah, his evil eyes filled with an indescribable light. That man, because he slaughtered all the dragons, in the end, even he himself became a dragon, with dark wings. Undoubtedly, he was a human, but he became the Dragon King. The war that gave birth to the Dragon King was called the Dragon King Ceremony. Law's voice sounded very clear. And the name of the Dragon King is Aconarolia. When the familiar name came into Noah's ears, although Noah had some guesses in his heart, he still couldn't help but be speechless. However, if you think about it, it seems so natural. If it wasn't for the ability to slaughter all the dragons in the entire dragon clan, how could Aconarolia have a 4-digit level of power? If it wasn't to this extent, with Noah's strength, how could he not even be able to take down a dragon? Econarolia. The black dragon who destroyed a huge country in Revelation. His real body is not only the Dragon King who obliterated the dragon clan that dominated the world, but also a human. A human who became a dragon. I heard that 7 years ago, Econarolia descended on your guild's holy land, Celestial Wolf Island, and almost annihilated all of you. You survived because of the protection of magic that can even freeze time. Law suddenly smiled. In that case, you should know the power of the Dragon King named Econarolia. With that said, Law turned around and continued to lead the way for Noah. Although Law didn't say it directly, Noah still heard a meaning from his words. Didn't you claim to be an existence that humans can't compare to? But if the opponent is Econarolia, there's nothing you can do, right? That was what Law wanted to say. Of course, Law didn't know. In the battle on Celestial Wolf Island 7 years ago, although Noah was protected and frozen by Mavis' super magic, Econarolia also suffered a heavy blow. If Law knew about this, he wouldn't be so calm now, right? However, it is undeniable that Law did bring very important information to Noah. If he didn't know this information, in the future, if he faced Econarolia, Noah would definitely suffer a big loss. Just when Noah was so glad, Law suddenly spoke. Well, we're here. Noah raised his head almost subconsciously and looked forward. Chapter 1704. In the depths of the cave full of dragon corpses, in a dark corner, Xuanai was leaning against the rock wall with her head down and her eyes closed. She seemed to have lost consciousness. Looking at Xuanai like that, Noah's heart tightened slightly. He quickened his pace, past Law, and came to Xuanai. He squatted down and checked Xuanai's breath. Don't worry, Xuanai just fainted. I didn't use any violent means on her. Law spread out his hands. Can you rest assured now? It seems that Law was very afraid of Noah, so he avoided angering Noah in all aspects, lest Noah get angry and really destroy him regardless of anything. From this point, it can also be seen that Law admitted that he was not Noah's opponent. However, that's not surprising. Not to mention Luo, I believe that no matter who it is, as long as they saw the amazing scene of Noah using the power of the Heavenly Sword of Salvation, in the Great Demon Battle Arts Arena that day, they would not think that they could be a match for Noah. A divine sword that can even cut a star, in the face of this legendary level power, it's estimated that only a stupid guy like Jermaine can speak arrogantly. Noah could naturally see Law's fear of him, but he didn't completely believe the words of this evil guy. After checking Xuanai's physical condition and finding nothing unusual, he raised his head and looked at Law. Under Noah's gaze, Law also felt a little difficult to breathe. After all, now, Noah has found Xuanai, and it's hard to guarantee that he won't do something to him. You don't want to break the promise you made, do you? Law's smile became a little forced. That's not what a strong person would do. Done by a powerhouse. Noah curled his lips. I don't think I have that kind of cultivation, but you should be glad that you really didn't do anything to the people around me. After that, Noah stopped looking at Law and took out the gift card. Clank. The dark gold gift card flashed, and a bottle of water appeared in Noah's hand. Opening the bottle cap, Noah fed the water into Snow's mouth bit by bit. Seeing this, Luo Kai confirmed that Noah really didn't intend to do anything to him. He unconsciously breathed a sigh of relief and said to Noah, "From the looks of it, you seem to have brought enough food and water, so I don't have to specially prepare them." Prepare food and water. Noah's hand movement paused and his eyes turned back to Law. In other words, you plan to let me and Xuanai continue to stay here? Hearing this, Law did not answer directly, but said this in a roundabout way. Although I don't think you'll go back on your word, in order to avoid any accidents, there's nothing wrong with you and Xuanai staying here before the Great Demon Combat Arts Exhibition competition ends, right? This sentence, Law obviously said very insincerely. If he really believed that Noah would not break his promise, then Law would not let Noah stay in such a place. Don't you want to know the content of the solar eclipse plan? Law said as if he wanted to make the last insurance. As long as you stay here until the end of the Great Demon Combat Arts Exhibition competition, then, when the Great Demon Combat Arts Exhibition competition is over, I will tell you everything. After that, Law's body was covered by a black shadow, turned into a black mist, and disappeared in place. Watching Law disappear in front of his eyes, Noah's eyes showed some thoughtfulness, and after a long time, he curled his lips. Let's see what tricks you're going to play. In this way, the sky gradually brightened up. In the fairy tale hotel, everyone gathered here, not as loud as before, but whispered and discussed, and the atmosphere was very dignified. After a while, Alusha glanced out of the window, looked at the sky getting brighter and brighter, and sighed. It seems that Noah and Xuanai won't be able to come back in time. Alusha's words made the fairy tale group more or less silent. Makarov, sitting at the bar, crossed his arms, closed his eyes, and no one knew what he was thinking. After a long time, Makarov opened his eyes and said, "Don't worry. Kana, in today's game, you will replace Noah and play with Team B." Everyone's eyes converged on Makarov's body. "I have no problem." Kana rarely did not hold the bottle and frowned slightly. "But, Noah, don't you need to take care of him?" "Yes." Nazi stepped forward, clenched his fist, and shouted at Makarov. "At least let me help Noah. You'll just be a burden if you go." Gray said this indifferently. "If there's something that even Noah can't solve, even if we go, it'll probably be useless, right?" Hearing this, everyone looked a little helpless. It had to be said that Gray's words were very correct. If there's something that even Noah can't solve, even if the entire fairy tale group went with him, they still wouldn't be able to solve it, right? Only Alusha clearly saw that although Gray said this, his hands were clenched into fists. Obviously, although he said this, if it was really necessary, Gray would definitely be like Nazi and go to Noah's side without hesitation. "How is brother Noah now?" Wendy hugged Xia Lulu worriedly. "I'm so worried." "Don't worry." Mi stretched out her hand and pressed on Wendy's shoulder, the smile on her face still unchanged. "If it's Noah, he'll be fine." "That's right." Lucy also comforted her. "Noah is so strong. Not to mention humans, even dragons are different. If they can beat him, they'll be fine." Although this statement is very unpleasant, I also agree. Gadjaloo said intentionally or unintentionally. Undoubtedly, that guy is a human, but he's as strong as a monster. Even Akanarolia can't do anything to him. What else do we have to worry about? Ditto. Laxus closed his eyes and spoke in a seemingly leisurely manner. "Instead of worrying about Noah, it's better to worry about our game today. Didn't Lord Noah entrust the game to us before he left?" Julian whispered. "Julian thinks that Lord Noah is telling us that even without him, we will never lose." Everyone looked at each other and laughed in unison. "Julian is right," Makarov said. "Noah entrusted the game to us. Since that's the case, we can't lose. Otherwise, we'll be betraying Noah's trust. Also, although we won't lose without Noah, we can't do without Noah," Makarov said. "So, those who need to participate in the game, focus on the game. As for the rest, some of you stay to take care of Lisanna, and some of you go out to see if there are any clues to Noah and Xuanai's whereabouts. Remember, work as a team. No one can be left alone." Makarov's gaze swept across everyone present. "That guy, Ivan, may still be watching us in secret, you know. Everyone nodded their heads and agreed. If that's the case. Naz raised his fist and his whole body burned with flames. I won't lose today's game. Not only today, we must obtain victory in the Great Devil Battle exhibition. Gray's mouth split into a grin. No matter who it is, bring it on. All of a sudden, everyone's fighting spirit was ignited. All right. Makarov jumped down from the bar and declared loudly. Let's get moving. Yes. Everyone's voices rang out in unison. Everyone followed Makarov's instructions. Some stayed to take care of the unconscious Lisanna, while others went out to look for Noah. The contestants, on the other hand, headed towards the arena. Nobody noticed that a young, fairy-like girl was floating on the ceiling of the inn. She looked at the group of people in the guild and smiled. Then, she turned into a phantom and disappeared. Chapter 1705. Ladies and gentlemen, it's finally the 4th day of our Great Demon Combat Arts competition. At this time, the Great Demon Combat Arts competition has entered the countdown. After all, the competition only lasts for 5 days, but I believe that the contestants will continue to give us exciting performances. On the rostrum of the Great Demon Combat Arts competition, Chapati was still reporting enthusiastically as usual, trying his best to stir up the atmosphere of the audience. However, although the audience's enthusiasm did not diminish, the contestants from the various large guilds were all looking in the direction of Fairy Tale B's contestant area, whispering to each other with puzzled expressions on their faces. In particular, in the contestant area of Sabertooth, Sting, Rog, Lucifer, Olyaga, and Maniba were all looking in the direction of Fairy Tale B's contestant area and looking at each other. Then, Lucifer spoke. There's no doubt that Noah Doria is not here. He probably won't be appearing today. The reason why the magic shooters of the major guilds had been paying attention to the situation of Fairy Tale B's contestant area was because they realized that Noah was not there. It was probably the first time that such a commotion was caused because of a contestant's absence, right? However, it was understandable that it would turn out this way. Who asked Noah's performance to be so amazing in the past 3 days? Of course, Noah's movements had long become the focus of attention of the major guilds and even the great magic shooters. Now that they realized that Noah was not there, these people were naturally very puzzled and even started to discuss it. Why isn't he appearing? Rog, who was usually silent, could not help but speak. Could it be that something happened? Rog, your question is a little stupid, Sting said a little disinterestedly. With that guy's strength, how could something happen to him? Unlike before, now, Sting and the others had truly experienced Noah's strength. Moreover, it was an unfathomable strength. So, to be honest, Sting did not think that anything had happened to Noah. Obviously, the others were thinking the same thing. In other words, the reason why that guy didn't appear was either because he was held back by something, or because he felt that there was no need to continue. Olyaga smacked his lips. I hope he's held back by something. Otherwise, it would be too unpleasant. Maniba didn't say anything as she listened to the conversation between Sting and the others. She only looked in the direction of Fairy Tale B, and an unfriendly smile gradually surfaced on her heavily made-up face. Forget it. No matter what the reason is, it's good that he didn't appear. Since that man took the initiative to give up the competition, then in this year's Great Demon Combat Arts exhibition, our Sabertooth position will not be shaken. Hearing this, other than the cold Rog, Sting, Lucius, and Olyaga also laughed. For Sabertooth, this year's Great Devil Combat exhibition was undoubtedly full of misfortunes. And these disasters were all because of one person, Noah Dole. Now that Noah was no longer here, then in this year's Great Demon Combat Arts exhibition competition, there was no one who could stop Sabertooth from reaching the top. At least, this was what the 5 people belonging to Sabertooth thought. Unfortunately, after today, these people who thought highly of themselves would realize a cruel fact. That was, even without Noah, the existence called fairy tale was not something that anyone could mess with. When the Great Demon Combat Arts Exhibition competition was in full swing, no one knew. Below the venue, in a cave full of dragon skeletons, 2 breaths rose and fell, leaving a faint trace of life in this silent space. Og, accompanied by a soft moan, Xuanai slowly woke up from her sleep and opened her eyes. As soon as she opened her eyes, Xuanai saw an extremely ferocious dragon skeleton. At that moment, Xuanai's heart skipped a beat. She abruptly straightened her body and put one hand on her waist as if it was a conditioned reflex. Originally, all of Xuanai's star keys were there. However, when Xuanai stretched out her hand, she touched nothing. Immediately, Xuanai opened her eyes wide and felt around in a panic. Key? Where's my key? As a star spirit archmage, without her key, Xuanai was no different from an ordinary girl. Of course, the reason why Xuanai was so flustered was not because she did not feel safe without her key. This seemingly strong, but actually very weak girl cherished her star spirit keys very much. As for why, there were 2 reasons. 1. Among those star spirit keys, there were Pisces, Libra, and Ophiuchus constellations that had accompanied Xuanai all these years. To Xuanai, they were her only companions before joining Fairy Tale. 2. Among those star spirit keys, there were Aries, Gemini, and Scorpio constellations that Noah gave to Xuanai. Xuanai would never forgive herself for losing the key given by the person she yearned for. Therefore, Xuanai looked for her star spirit keys in a panic and looked around. Until then, Xuanai realized that there were huge dragon skeletons all around her. And in front of Xuanai, there was a piece of clothing. A piece of clothing that had just covered Xuanai's body fell to the ground as Xuanai straightened up. Looking at that piece of clothing, Xuanai was stunned. She picked it up and muttered with uncertainty. This seems to be Sir Noah's clothing. This question was answered in the next second. In the dark and deathly silent cave, a series of footsteps slowly sounded and attracted Xuanai's attention. Then, Xuanai saw it. In front, Noah was looking around and stroking the dragon skeletons as he walked over and noticed that Xuanai had woken up. Xuanai. Noah was stunned and walked towards Xuanai. Are you awake? Sir Noah. Xuanai's heart calmed down a little, but she still anxiously spoke. Sir Noah, did you see my star spirit key? Your star spirit key is with me. Noah took out a bunch of keys from his pocket and handed it to Xuanai. Because it fell on the ground, I temporarily put it away. Xuanai quietly let out a sigh of relief. She took the key and pressed it in front of her, looking at ease. It wasn't until this moment that Wen'o recalled the current situation and looked at Noah hesitantly. Sir Noah, why are we here? What? Noah squatted down and looked at Xuanai. Did you forget what happened before you lost consciousness? Xuanai began to recall. Not long after, Xuanai's hand that was holding the star spirit key tightened as he spoke with some uncertainty. I was attacked. Yes. Noah nodded. Then, I came to look for you. What about Lady Mira and Lady Lisanna? Xuanai panicked. Are the 2 ladies all right? Mira and Lisanna are fine. Don't worry. Noah held Xuanai's hand and motioned for her to calm down. Lisanna's mana was drained, but that's it. As for Mira, she should be in a competition now. Nothing happened that you need to worry about. Competition. Xuanai was surprised. Then Sir Noah, you, all right. I know you have a lot of questions. Noah sighed. I will explain everything to you. Don't worry. Xuanai nodded uneasily. Then, Noah explained what happened after Xuanai fainted. Knowing that Noah gave up on participating in the Great Demon Battle exhibition because of her, Xuanai's face paled. Chapter 1706. Seeing that Xuanai's face had lost all color, Noah was shocked. Xuanai. What happened to you? Are you not feeling well? Xuanai didn't care about Noah's question. Her body started to shrink and her face became paler and paler. Originally, Xuanai was sitting on the ground and leaning against the wall. The moment she shrank her body, Xuanai was like a helpless child, shrinking into a ball. My fault. Xuanai hugged her knees, her eyes starting to lose focus. It's all my fault. At this moment, Xuanai's heart was filled with despair. As mentioned before, Xuanai was a weak and self-abased young lady. Actually, in Xuanai's eyes, she had always been a person who brought misfortune to others. Since young, the people who accompanied Xuanai, those who were friendly to Xuanai, almost none of them had a good ending. For example, Xuanai's family met with misfortune. In the end, only Xuanai escaped. Another example, Noah saved Xuanai and gave Xuanai a new life. In the end, on Sky Wolf Island, Noah also encountered a Conarolia. Together with his companions in the guild, they were all frozen for an entire 7 years. Misfortune after misfortune, disaster after disaster, they all happened to the people around Xuanai. In this way, how could Xuanai not feel inferior? And this time, Xuanai finally found a new home and was warmly accepted by the people of Fairy Tale. In the end, because of Xuanai, Noah not only agreed to not participate in the Great Demon Martial Arts competition, but also stayed here to accompany her, leaving her companions in Fairy Tale to fight alone. If because Noah didn't participate in the competition, Fairy Tale lost this year's Great Demon Martial Arts competition, then who was to blame? Noah and the others suffered for 7 years, protecting their companions in the guild with difficulty, and their wish to regain their former glory was broken. Then who was to blame? Thinking of this, Xuanai could only think of one reason. It's all my fault. Xuanai seemed to have lost her soul, muttering helplessly and hopelessly. It's all my fault. In the endless self-blame, Xuanai thought of Mira and Lisanna again. In the attack last night, in order to save Xuanai and Lisanna, Mira pushed the 2 girls away and was trapped by the black fog. If it wasn't to save Xuanai and Lisanna, with Mira's strength, Mira wouldn't have been trapped so easily. Then, all of Mana, she, and Xuanai's. That's also my fault, my fault. Xuanai hugged his head and muttered in pain. Those who follow me will all meet with misfortune, will all. Xuanai, Nai's right, Nai's, S of's color, SSSS, S, hers S's face. Her, S writes as. Her. Xuanai. Nai. It's my fault. Xuanai acted as if he didn't hear anything and muttered in a daze. It's all my fault. Noah was speechless as he watched Xuanai fall into endless self-blame. He raised the hand that was grabbing Xuanai's slender shoulder and held Xuanai's cheek, raising Xuanai's face to face him. Xuanai. Noah looked into her eyes. Look at me. However, Xuanai still didn't react to Noah's words. Her eyes were still unfocused. If this continued, Noah felt that Xuanai would lose all her emotions. That wasn't a joke. Magic came from the heart. Therefore, this was also one of the reasons why Noah lost control of his magic power when he was a child when he was irritable. Of course, it was the same for others. Mira, for example, had come into contact with demons when she was young and awakened a magic that could receive demonic power. That was another example. If Mira hadn't met Noah at that time and joined Fairy Tale, she would have lost her heart sooner or later. She would have been devoured by magic and become a real demon. Now, Xuanai's heart was filled with negative emotions. It was also possible that her magic would go out of control and she would become a walking corpse. Xuanai. Xuanai. Noah patted Xuanai's cheeks, but it didn't have any effect. He gritted his teeth and shouted. You idiot! As soon as he finished speaking, Noah abruptly held up Snow's face and lowered his head. In the next moment, Noah kissed Xuanai and captured her lips. Xuanai's eyes widened. The sudden forceful kiss finally caused this young lady, who had nearly lost her mind, to recover. Her unfocused eyes once again began to gather. Her eyes were filled with disbelief as she looked at Noah's face, which was just inches away from her. At this moment, Noah pried open Xuanai's lips and teeth with ease. He captured the tip of Xuanai's tongue and rolled it up with his tongue like a madman. Xuanai's body went limp. She pressed her hands against Noah's chest and weakly endured Noah's domineering kiss. Her heart began to tremble. The intimate contact with the person she longed for caused Xuanai's mind to go blank. Her face that had originally lost its color gradually became rosy, and even her breathing began to become a little rapid. Under such circumstances, Xuanai passively endured Noah's powerful kiss. Her tongue was tightly entangled by Noah and she couldn't resist at all. Before long, Xuanai began to feel suffocated. Only then did Noah let go of Xuanai and let go of her lips. Xuanai stared blankly at Noah's face that gradually moved away. She subconsciously raised her hand and covered her mouth. She looked at Noah as if she was dreaming. She still couldn't believe it all. Of course, Xuanai didn't dislike Noah. Rather, it was the opposite. She even felt that she wasn't good enough for Noah. Now, after being kissed by Noah in such a domineering way, Xuanai only felt like she was dreaming. Everything became extremely unreal. However, Noah held Xuanai's face and made her look at him. He stared into her eyes and said, "Listen carefully. Listen carefully, your so-called saying that you will bring misfortune to the people around you, in my opinion, is simply the world's biggest joke." Xuanai was stunned. Let's not talk about the past for now. But right now, I can tell you very clearly that even if you can bring misfortune to others, it has no effect on me at all, Noah said firmly. I have to shoulder the misfortune of thousands of worlds, and I have to fight against the source of all misfortune. Even so, the world still cares for me, and has never let any misfortune happen to me. You want to affect me with your misfortune alone. Don't make me laugh my head off. Xuanai didn't understand Noah's words at all. However, Xuanai was not an idiot. She still understood one thing. That was, Noah seemed to be carrying something that was even heavier than her misfortune alone. It was so heavy that Xuanai couldn't even imagine the responsibility. I will only say it once, so you have to listen carefully. Undoubtedly, you have to listen clearly. Noah looked straight into Xuanai's eyes that were shaking because of her wavering. The person who decided not to participate in the Great Demon Battle exhibition was me. The person who decided to stay here with you was also me. Although you are part of the reason, it is not entirely your fault. If you continue to blame yourself like this, then I will really get angry. Sir Noah. Xuanai looked at Noah in a daze and said almost subconsciously. But, the people who are with me will all have misfortune. The closer the person is to me, the more misfortune will happen. It has always been, so, that is a joke. Noah's hand that was holding Xuanai's face tightened slightly. If that is really the case, then I would like to see what kind of misfortune will happen to me who is close to you. After saying that, Noah lowered his head again and captured Xuanai's lips. Their tongues intertwined. This time, Xuanai was completely intoxicated. She timidly and uneasily responded to Noah's domineering kiss. Her heart was lost. Chapter 1707. In the dragon graveyard that was so dark that not a single ray of light could be seen, the cold air spread slightly as if it symbolized eternity, making this space present an indescribable deathly stillness. However, the cold air and the eternal deathly stillness did not extinguish the warmth of the man and woman in this space. Instead, the two of them felt a different kind of heat from the surroundings. His breath hit the air, causing that small area of air to gradually become scorching hot. Noah and Xuanai hugged each other, leaning against the rock wall in the deepest part of the cave. They felt each other's heartbeat, not feeling that this space was very cold at all. Noah kept hugging Xuanai like this, caressing her soft hair while kissing her smooth cheeks and lips, making Xuanai's delicate body tremble slightly. Xuanai could only respond passively, feeling like she was in a dream. Her beautiful face was slightly red, leaning in Noah's embrace, as if she did not have the slightest bit of strength, not moving at all. After maintaining this state for who knew how long, Noah finally stopped, gazing at Xuanai's moist eyes and slightly red face, softly saying, "Now, our relationship is close enough, right?" Being stared at by Noah's pitch-black deep eyes, Xuanai's beautiful face became redder and redder, and she lowered her head in embarrassment, feeling shy and ashamed. "Sorry, Lord Noah," Xuanai said softly. "I actually showed such a weak appearance in front of you, I really don't have the face to see you again. There is no need to feel ashamed." Noah continued to stroke Xuanai's head and said, "Although there is nothing wrong with being strong, being weak is not a sin. You are only an ordinary girl, sometimes, learning to rely on others is very important." "Is that so?" Xuanai nodded as if she did not fully understand, softly murmuring, "I feel like I have been saved by Lord Noah again." Noah smiled faintly, extended his hand, and gently brushed it across Xuanai's lips, speaking frankly, "There is nothing bad about it, right? No matter when, a kiss from a beautiful girl is the best gift to any man. I have indeed received this gift, haven't I?" "How? How can that be?" Xuanai's pretty face reddened again, and she said with some panic, "For someone like me, even if Lord Noah dotes on me so much, it can't be considered a thank you gift." "Oh." Noah raised his eyebrows and said with a faint smile, "In other words, a kiss isn't enough to thank me. How are you going to thank me?" With that, Noah moved his mouth close to Xuanai's ear and whispered in a low voice, "For example, give me something more important than a kiss." "Something more important than kissing." Xuanai's heartbeat began to speed up, and her face was already completely red. In the end, Xuanai could only mutter in a voice even softer than a mosquito, If Lord Noah thinks that someone like me can do it." At this point, Noah should have understood Xuanai's intentions no matter how stupid he was. Obviously, at this point, no matter what Noah wanted to do to the girl in his arms, she wouldn't have any objections. In short, Xuanai's current state was in a state where Noah could do whatever he wanted to her. And Noah wasn't Lu Xiaohui, so it was impossible for him not to be moved. It's a pity that the location isn't right. Noah pinched Xuanai's little nose, who was extremely shy. "Let's do the rest after we return." Hearing this, Xuanai finally remembered what kind of environment they were in and what kind of situation she was in and what kind of words she said. Thus, shame surged into Xuanai's heart all of a sudden, making her feel too ashamed to face anyone. She could only speak with a red face. Then let's hurry back, Noah was a little embarrassed, and said teasingly, "Are you that anxious to give yourself to me?" "No. It's not like that." Xuanai shook her head with a red face. I mean, we should hurry back now, my companions are still in the competition." "That's right." Noah stopped smiling and raised his head to look up. "My companions are in the competition, so leave the rest to me." Xuanai was a little shocked, and asked with uncertainty, Lord Noah, are you not going back to the competition? Elisha and the rest are enough for the competition. Noah narrowed his eyes. Compared to the competition, the inside story of the Great Demon Battle Exhibition is undoubtedly more important. I have to find out what's going on with the solar eclipse plan. Otherwise, there might be a disaster that will drag everyone into it. Does Lord Noah intend to stay here? Xuanai asked after a moment of silence. Until after the Great Demon Battle Exhibition is over. That's right. Noah nodded. That guy named Law seems to be planning something. For this reason, he did not hesitate to expose himself in front of me, capture you here, and threaten me with death. He definitely has a big plan. Moreover, behind him, there seems to be the shadow of the kingdom. This year's Great Demon Battle Arts Exhibition tournament is full of mysteries. If these mysteries are not solved, no one knows what will happen. Originally, it would take a lot of effort to solve these mysteries, but that guy called Law is just too confident. He seems to think that once the Great Demon Battle Exhibition is over and his plan succeeds, then I will no longer be able to do anything. Noah pursed his lips and smiled. So, as long as I stay here, that guy will definitely confess everything to me when the Great Demon Battle Exhibition is over. Since that's the case, there's no need for me to investigate on my own. I'll just wait for him to reveal everything himself. But, what about the Great Demon Battle Exhibition? Xuanai asked worriedly. Without Noah Sama's participation, can the lords in the guild win? It should be known that in this year's Great Demon Battle Exhibition, not only is there the Saber-Tooth, who has always been the champion in the past, but there are also unimaginably strong enemies in the other guilds. For example, in this year's Great Demon Battle Exhibition, only Noah can firmly suppress the Saber-Tooth of the Lamia scale. Another example is Kagura of the Mermaid Heel, who is known as the strongest sorcerer in this year's Great Demon Battle Exhibition besides the Saber-Tooth. Her strength must be very strong. In the other guilds, like the Cotter Cerberus, there are also S-rank sorcerers who can compete with Elisha. And although the sorcerers of the Blue Pegasus aren't very strong, the application of magic is very diverse and suitable for all kinds of situations, so they can't be underestimated. In addition, there is also the Raven Tail who is secretly watching the fairy tale. Without Noah's participation, the situation won't be very good, right? In this regard, Noah has a different opinion. Maybe without my participation, the situation won't be as smooth as before, but that doesn't mean that our guild situation is very bad. Noah said. Although the Saber-Tooth is very strong, Laxus should be able to barely match him. Kagura naturally can't be ignored, but we also have Elisha and Mira. Although the other guilds are also difficult to deal with, it's a pity that in terms of difficulty, our guild is definitely not weaker than the other guilds. As for the Raven Tail, Noah smiled indifferently. That guild no longer exists. No longer exists. Yukino suddenly froze. Noah didn't explain and just hugged the weak and cute girl. He raised his head and looked up, the corners of his mouth rising little by little. Presumably, the Great Demonic Combat Arts Exhibition will cause quite a bit of chaos because of Raventail's absence, right? Yukino blinked, obviously not understanding. However, Noah's trust in the guild also affected Yukino, making her feel relieved and silently cheering for her guild. Chapter 1708. Just as Noah expected, because Raventail had not arrived for a long time, everyone in the venue was talking about it. In the two contestant areas of Fairy Tale, everyone had gathered together to discuss this matter. In the end, there was only one conclusion that everyone came to. It seems that something must have happened to Raventail. Elisha said thoughtfully. If the person who attacked Mira and Lisanna yesterday and took Xuanai away is Raventail, then the reason why that guild is not here is most likely that Noah has taken care of them, right? This was the conclusion that everyone came to. After all, this was the only conclusion that was consistent with the current situation. But if that's the case, Noah, who has taken care of Raventail, should be able to come back. Grace said. Now, Noah hasn't come back yet. There should be a deeper reason, right? In other words. Lucy hesitated for a while and said tentatively. The whereabouts of Noah and Raventail are unknown. It's very likely that they are together now, or even fighting. How could that be the reason? Gadgula curled his lips. I don't think a Raventail would be able to hold that guy back for so long. Hearing Gadgula's words, everyone looked at each other and nodded in agreement. Obviously, no one believed that the power of the Raventail was enough to keep Noah out for the entire night. There must be a deeper reason for this. It's really troublesome. Nazi held his head and looked unhappy. If you want to have a showdown, why don't you just come and find trouble with us in a fair and square manner? Why do they have to make things so troublesome? It's because there's no chance of winning in a head-on confrontation that those people would do such a thing. Lucy warned. Nazi, don't mess around anymore. The president is already making arrangements. We just need to focus on our game. Lucy is right. Alusha nodded and looked around at everyone. In any case, it's better that Ivan's guild is not here. This way, we don't have to worry about what they will do in secret. However, as soon as this sentence fell, another voice sounded. It's a pity that Ivan's guild is not here. For us, it's not just a good thing. With that said, Makarov, dressed in a suit, walked out of the corridor in front of everyone. There's a piece of news that I don't know if it's good or bad. Makarov said with a serious expression. Because Raventail didn't show up, and no one was found at the hotel they were staying at, the organizers have decided to disqualify Raventail from the competition. Everyone immediately burst into laughter. Only Wendy tilted her head and asked in confusion. But, why don't we know if this news is good or bad? Because, after disqualifying Raventail, the number of teams participating in the competition will be reduced to 7. This way, putting aside the competition part, there will be no way to pair up for the duel part. Makarov sighed. So, the organizers have decided to let us combine Team A and Team B and choose a new team to participate in the competition. This news made everyone frown. Combine the teams. That was not a good thing for Fairy Tale, who had the upper hand. After all, originally, if 2 teams participated in the competition together, the chances of winning would increase. Now that they were combined, Fairy Tale's advantage was gone. However, currently, Team A and Team B were in first and second place respectively. This was an advantage that could not be ignored. After the combination, how will the points be calculated? Laxus looked at Makarov, crossed his arms, and asked calmly. Although the 2 teams are in first and second place respectively, the points won't be the same, right? This has already been decided. Makarov said helplessly. After the combination, we will use the results of the team with the lower score. At this moment, everyone frowned. One must know that Team B had 44 points, while Team A only had 37 points. There was a difference of 7 points. Sabretooth, who was in third place, scored 34 points. If they were to use the results of the team with the lower score, then the gap between Fairy Tale and Sabretooth would be much smaller. It would be very easy for them to surpass each other. Isn't this unfair to us? Zhu Bian said angrily. Even if we combine our teams, we should use the results of the team with the higher score. That's right. Karna also nodded. 2 of our guild's teams have passed the qualifiers and obtained the qualifications to participate in the official competition. Now, they're merging our teams without permission. Not only are they destroying our advantage, but they're also trying to make it even smaller. Are the organizers deliberately suppressing us to make the competition more exciting and suspenseful? Maybe that's part of the reason. Makarov raised his head and looked at everyone present. But the bigger reason should be that the organizers are suspicious of us, right? Suspicious. Everyone was stunned. Only Alusha understood what Makarov meant. I see. Alusha narrowed her eyes. Because Noah wasn't present, the organizers are suspecting that our guild let Noah attack Raventail to eliminate the competition. Is that against the rules? That's right. Makarov stroked his beard. But that's just suspicion at best. So, the organizers didn't disqualify us from the competition. Instead, they let us combine and use the results of the team with the lower score. They are probably trying to cover up this matter. Cover up? Lucy couldn't help but interject. That can't be considered a suspicion, but it's basically confirmed that Noah did something to the Raventail. It can't be helped. Our guild has too many connections with Ivan's guild. Moreover, before the Great Magic Combat Arts competition started, Noah and Ivan had an argument on the street. They have enough reason to think that we did it. Chapter 1709. The competition had officially begun. However, as soon as Chabadi announced the start of the competition from the rostrum, all the spectators fell silent. They looked at each other with a confused look on their faces. Not only the spectators, but even the magic shooters from the major guilds looked at the battle in the center of the field in amazement. They were somewhat unable to react. Taking a closer look, a huge water ball with a diameter of more than 100 meters was suspended in the air. In the huge water ball, there were two girls in swimsuits. One was wearing a bold red bikini, showing off her perfect figure, but she was looking at Alusha with a dignified face. The other one was wearing a conservative swimsuit like a training suit. She was floating in the water with a victorious smile on her face. Aside from Alusa and Maniba, the other contestants from the other guilds were lying on the ground outside the giant water sphere. They were also wearing swimsuits, and their bodies were soaking wet. They all had blank looks on their faces. Looking at this strange situation, on the platform, Chapati was extremely surprised and puzzled. At the beginning of the competition, except for contestant Alusha from Fairy Tale and contestant Maniba from Saber-Tooth, all the other contestants fell out of the field and were directly eliminated. What the hell is going on? Chapati's report made all the spectators talk about it. Only Alusha, who was in the water ball, still looked at Maniba with a dignified face and said in a deep voice. What did you do? The fourth day of the Great Magic Battle Arts exhibition was a naval battle. As the name implied, although the battle was not in the sea, the contestants were required to enter the water ball in the center of the venue to fight and find ways to stay in the water ball. Once they were hit by the huge water ball, they were considered to be eliminated. The first person to come out of the water ball was the last person. The second person to be hit out was the second to last person. And so on, until the third person was born, when there were only two people left in the water ball. From then on, the special rules were used. The so-called special rule referred to the 5-minute rule. When there were only two people left in the water ball, a 5-minute countdown would begin. Within the next 5 minutes, if one of the remaining two people was hit by a water ball, that person would fall to the last place. If the remaining two did not get hit by the water ball after 5 minutes, then even if one of them was hit, he would still be able to get second place. The organizers probably wanted to make the competition more interesting, so they used such a rule. However, no one expected that. As soon as the competition started, apart from Alusha and Maniba, all the other contestants from the other 4 guilds mysteriously fell out of the water bowl. Everyone was puzzled by this unbelievable situation. However, Alusha could feel it clearly. At the start of the match, a very special magic emerged from Maniba's body. Therefore, there was no doubt that all of this was Maniba's doing. In other words, in just a moment, Meniba used a method that even Alusha was not aware of to eliminate the rest of the contestants, and only Alusha remained. To this, Meniba just laughed. This is my magic, a magic that manipulates space. A magic that manipulates space. Alusha was slightly startled, but she immediately understood. Don't tell me, you can use magic to manipulate space and teleport as you wish. That's it. Meniba raised one hand, and then, on that hand, a wave of space began to vibrate, condensing into a ball of light. It's not just me. As long as it's within my sight, I can use this magic to move everything I want. Once the competition starts, I'll throw out all those fellows who are in my way. How about that? Very good magic, right? Hearing Meniba's words, the surrounding audience suddenly understood. However, not only did Alusha not feel relieved, her pretty face became more and more tense, and her gaze towards Meniba became extremely sharp. If that's the case, why don't you teleport me out as well? That way you'll win, right? Not just win. As long as Meniba teleported Alusha out now, then, under the rule of 5 minutes, Alusha would directly fall to the last place. For Sabretooth, who had been hostile to Fairy Tail, wasn't this the situation that they wanted to see the most? However, Meniba teleported the rest of the contestants out, but left Alusha alone, and didn't teleport her out, letting the 5 minutes continue to pass. Could it be that Meniba wanted to humiliate Alusha by teleporting her out at the last moment of the 5 minutes? Directly teleporting you out and making you the last place, that's not bad. Meniba smiled rather coldly. Unfortunately, that'd be too boring. Boring? Alusha's pair of eyes began to gradually condense. Is it because of this reason that you deliberately let me stay? That's right. Meniba admitted frankly, but the words that came out of her mouth made people's hearts turn cold. Isn't your fairy tale very powerful? Isn't there an existence that humans can't compare to? But you can't be thinking of taking the title of the strongest from us by yourself, right? Then let me see what kind of ability you have. Our Sabretooth is the strongest. Meniba looked at Alusha with extremely cold eyes. Want to take away our title of the strongest? Just a little fairy, don't be too complacent. The audience suddenly became silent. Alusha just stared at Meniba. After a long while, she relaxed her body, and her eyes became sharp. You didn't teleport me out of the arena at the first moment, but you still openly explained the effect of your magic to me. Who is the one who is complacent? I'll prove it to you. As soon as her voice fell. Clank. Alusha's body suddenly bloomed with dazzling light. Seeing this scene, Meniba's smile became vicious. She raised one hand, and a wave of magic light gathered in her hand, emitting bursts of spatial fluctuations. At this moment, Alusha, whose whole body bloomed with dazzling light, moved. Accompanied by a faint sound of breaking through the air, Alusha's figure disappeared in place, turning into a dazzling light shadow. With an extremely terrifying speed, she drew a perfect arc in the water and violently shot toward Meniba's direction. Meniba, who was preparing to slowly torture Alusha to vent her anger, was shocked. However, before Meniba could react, the light shadow rushed to her back and fiercely hit Meniba's body. Bang! Even in the water, a muffled sound could be clearly heard. Meniba, who suffered a heavy blow, directly spat out the air in her mouth, and her whole body flew backward. After a while, she reacted, trying to stabilize her body, and suddenly raised her head and looked forward. There, Alusha's figure slowly appeared from the dazzling light. However, Alusha's red bikini swimsuit had disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by an animal costume. It was a costume that looked like a cat and a leopard, with animal ears on the head. Wearing this animal costume, Alusha held 2 knight swords in her hands, and a pair of eyes suddenly opened. Then, under Meniba's gaze, she turned into a phantom, like an arrow leaving the bow, and once again violently shot out. That speed was just like a torpedo in the water, leaving only a faint trace, and stirring up a surge of water. Meniba turned pale with fright, and directly swept over her body. Poochie! In the tearing sound, a sword light cut through Meniba's side abdomen, and Meniba let out a scream. Chapter 1710. WH. What? In the contestant area of Sabretooth, Sting, Logue, Lucifer, and Olga watched as Meniba's side was slashed by the sword light in the water ball. They all turned pale with fright as Meniba let out a cry of pain. On the contrary, when the audience saw the sudden change in the situation, they all began to cheer. Under such circumstances, in the water ball, Alusha, who was dressed like a wild animal, directly turned into a flash of light. Like lightning, she repeatedly dashed through the water at a speed that couldn't be seen by the naked eye. It was as if she came from all directions, and the sword light slashed Meniba's body one after another. Poochie poochie poochie. A series of tearing sounds resounded. Ah! Meniba's scream resounded. After being slashed repeatedly by Alusha, who had turned into a flash of light, Meniba felt a sharp pain all over her body. This girl with a somewhat twisted personality, whose face was covered with heavy makeup, began to show a trace of pain. The sharp pain from all over her body finally made Meniba react. She tightly bit her lips, and her face twisted. Damn it! After angrily shouting, Meniba fiercely spread out her hands, and a wave of magic light fluctuated in her hands. Suddenly, one wave of magic light after another appeared around Alusha, who had turned into a flash of light. Moreover, the magic inside began to riot. In the next moment, the magic light waves exploded one after another. Bang, 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 bang. Accompanied by a series of explosions, the magic light waves turned into the most direct impact. Like bombs, they exploded one after another, setting off waves of turbulence in the water. Not only could Meniba's magic be used to control space, but she could also change the properties of the space that her magic was used on. For example, if he added the fire attribute like just now, the space controlled by Meniba would directly turn into heat and explode like a bomb. The destructive power and lethality would be very strong. However, in the face of those continuous explosions, Alusha was like a flash of lightning. She was extremely fast, constantly dodging the exploding space. She was flashing in the turbulence and wasn't affected at all. So fast. Meniba's expression changed. At this moment, Alusha swept through space again. The night sword in her hand suddenly flashed, and the sword light once again slashed through Meniba's body. Poochie! With another tearing sound, Meniba's shoulder was fiercely slashed. The sharp pain assaulted her mind, causing Meniba to scream out in pain. For a moment, Meniba was completely unable to do anything to Alusha. She endured the slashes from all directions, and continuously let out miserable cries. How? How is this possible? In the contestant area of Sabretooth, Sting tightly grasped the railing, his eyes full of disbelief. Milady can't even fight back against that Alusha Chocolito. No, the problem lies with Alusha Chocolito's armor. Lucius' expression became serious. Alusha Chocolito uses magic to change equipment. She can change equipment at will. Right now, the armor she's wearing is called flying armor. It can increase the user's speed by several levels. So, Milady's magic can't catch up with that woman. Olga was also shocked. Is that Alusha Chocolito really that strong? Alusha Chocolito is indeed very strong, but in my memory, she's not strong enough to make Milady unable to fight back. Lucius stared at the huge water ball in mid-air and said in a deep voice. There must be some other reason. Rog also stared at the water ball that was constantly transforming into flashes of light that swept past Meniba's body. After a while, Alusha suddenly widened her eyes as she slashed at Meniba's body one after another, causing sword lights to shoot out from all directions and slash at Meniba's body. After a long while, she suddenly opened her eyes wide. Alusha Chocolito's weapon isn't an ordinary weapon. Hearing Roger's voice, everyone was shocked. It wasn't until this moment that they realized with difficulty. In Alusha's hand, which was constantly sweeping through space like a flash of light, one of the two knight swords looked like a fish's fin. It was dark green all over. That's... Lucius said in shock. In my memory, that seems to be a weapon that goes with Sea Emperor's armor. As soon as this was said, everyone immediately understood. Alusha didn't just use the flying armor that could provide super high speed, she also used the Sea Emperor's armor that had a great resistance to water. That water attribute magic weapon completely cut through the resistance and pressure of water, allowing Alusha to walk as if she was walking on flat ground and could increase her speed by several levels. On the contrary, Meniba was hindered by the resistance of water and her movements were somewhat sluggish. With one increasing and one decreasing, Meniba simply couldn't adapt to Alusha's super high speed and could only passively endure the attacks. Poochie! The sword light was like lightning. With the support of the flying armor, it quickly slashed through Meniba's body, causing Meniba to be heavily injured and covered in cuts and bruises. In the midst of the screams, Meniba heard Alusha's indifferent voice. If you had used your magic to teleport me out from the beginning, then I definitely wouldn't have been able to beat you in this battle. Unfortunately, you were too confident in your own strength and your own advantages. Now, your magic can't catch up with me at all, and in the water, you can't be unaffected like me. This is the result. Your arrogance led to your defeat, Meniba. While speaking, Alusha, who had turned into a flash of light, suddenly flashed behind Meniba. Her body spun, and one of her legs was like a whip, violently lashing out. Along with a surge of water, it heavily whipped Meniba's side waist. Bang! In the midst of the muffled sound, Meniba screamed again. Her whole body was sent flying by the powerful leg whip. In the end, Meniba flew out of the water ball and fell heavily on the ground, spitting out a mouthful of blood. The battle is over. Chapati immediately raised the microphone and announced loudly. On the fourth day of the Great Demon Martial Arts Competition, the reorganized team, Fairy Tail, won first place in the sea battle. In the water ball, Alusha, who was wearing the flying armor, raised the Sea Emperor's sword high in the air, causing the entire audience to burst into enthusiastic cheers, welcoming the victory. Compared to the loud cheers from the audience, the contestant area of Sabertooth was silent. Impossible. Sting murmured, as if he had lost his soul. Miss, actually lost, Rog, Lucius, and Olyaga were also silent. It was no wonder that their performance was so unbearable. First of all, they had already determined that Fairy Tail, without Noah, was no match for Sabertooth. Now, after being slapped in the face by Alusha, these people were already dumbfounded. Secondly, Meniba, who could control space magic, was the strongest sorcerer in Sabertooth. Even Sting and Rog of the Twin Dragons were no match for her. How could Sting and the others believe their eyes that Meniba was so easily defeated by Fairy Tail? Meniba, who was lying on the ground, looked at the sky in disbelief and murmured, "I lost." These words were buried in the rising and falling cheers of the crowd. And the cheers were simply the biggest mockery for Meniba, who was defeated by Alusha because of her carelessness. At that moment, Meniba raised her head and looked at Alusha, who was holding her weapon high in the water ball and enjoying the cheers of the audience. In her eyes, there was unimaginable rage and viciousness. Alusha. Chocolito. Chapter 1711. Without a doubt, after this round, Alusha was thoroughly hated by Maniba. However, no matter how much Maniba hated Alusha, this twisted and self-belittling girl still couldn't change the fact that she was defeated by Alusha because of her arrogance. Therefore, in this battle, Alusha successfully helped Fairy Tail obtain a valuable 10 points. Although Maniba lost because of her arrogance, she still managed to last past the 5-minute time limit, so Sabretooth didn't fall to the last place and obtained the second place of this battle, obtaining 8 points. Even though he had gotten second place, Sabretooth's self-esteem had once again been torn to shreds. Originally, Sabretooth thought that if Noah wasn't here, no one would be able to threaten their victory. Because of this battle, Sabretooth's spirit was once again severely damaged. Perhaps they really couldn't learn their lesson. Even at this stage, Maniba and her party still didn't think that a single fairy tale could really suppress a Sabretooth. Therefore, they decided to get back at the Sabretooth part of the duel. Unfortunately, in the end, this group of people was once again severely defeated. Due to the combination of Fairy Tail and Raven Tail's absence, the duel section was divided into 3 rounds. Different from the previous 3 days, the 4th day's duel section was a group duel. 2 people from each group would be selected to fight in pairs. After the 3 group duels, the results were as follows. The first duel was between the Blue Pegasus and the Cotter Cerberus. The result was that the Blue Pegasus won and obtained 10 points. The second duel was between Lamia Scale and Mermaid Heel. The result was a tie, with both sides winning 5 points. The third duel was a perfect example of what it meant to be enemies on a narrow road. Fairy Tail vs. Sabretooth. Players: Naz, Gadula vs. Sting, Logue. In other words, it was a duel between 4 Dragon Slayer Archmages. As far as the process was concerned, this duel was quite interesting. Not to mention anything else, Sting and Logue were indeed not weak. 2 of the 5 most powerful magic shooters in the previous Great Demon Combat Arts exhibition matches, Justin and Logue, were at least much more powerful than Naz and Gadula during the S-rank magic shooter advancement exam. However, after 3 months of cultivation, Naz and Gadula could really be said to be reborn. Their strength had increased to the point that even their companions in the guild were surprised. Therefore, Naz and Gadula almost completely defeated Sting and Logue. They won the battle without any injuries, and won another 10 points. In the end, the whole day, the rankings almost didn't change, but the gap between the team scores was widened. First place, Fairy Tail, 57p. Second place, Sabretooth, 42p. Third place, Mermaid Heel, 39p. Fourth place, Lamia Scale, 36p. Fifth place, Blue Pegasus, 29p. Sixth place, Cotter Cerberus, 14p. At this point, the 4th day of the Great Demon Combat Arts competition ended. On the other hand, Fairy Tail completely defeated Sabretooth on this day, pulling the gap between them to 15 points. Without the monsters, could the fairy still defeat the tiger? There was no need to answer Migniba's question. Thus, on this day, the pride of the entire Sabretooth magic shooters was torn to shreds, which gave Lucius and Olga a new idea. Perhaps, this time, the title of the strongest guild in the Fiori Kingdom was really not fated with Sabretooth. After all, the great demonic battle show had entered the real late stage. The end of the 4th day meant that the 5th day was coming. At this time tomorrow, the outcome would be revealed. However, facing Fairy Tail, would Sabretooth really be able to win tomorrow? No one knew about this. There was only one thing that could be confirmed. That was, as the great demonic battle show went on, an unknown plan was also going on. Night, who knew how many times it had fallen? In the palace, in Emerald's room, the princess of the Fiori Kingdom was standing by the window like before, looking at the night sky outside, her delicate face full of worry. At this time, the door was pushed open, and Alcardios walked into the room. Looking at Emerald, who was standing by the window, he was silent for a while, then suddenly opened his mouth. The 4th day of the Great Demonic Battle show has ended. After tomorrow, the results will be out. Yes. Emerald's small hand slowly clenched as she whispered. At that time, whether or not the solar eclipse plan will be carried out will depend on the results of the Great Demonic Battle show. Whether or not it is carried out, we must be prepared. Alcardios said. The magic collection is basically complete, now we only need the power of the Star Elf Archmages. To be more precise, it should be the power of the keys of the 12 zodiac gates. Emerald turned around and looked at Alcardios. Sir Alcardios, how are the 2 Star Elf Archmages in the guild now? Hearing this, Arcadios' expression turned solemn and serious. I was just about to report this matter to the princess. What? Emerald suddenly became nervous. Could it be that there is a problem? Yes. Alcardios said with a serious expression. Of the 2 Star Elf Archmages in the guild, one of them suddenly disappeared, and even the one who is beyond the human range also disappeared. What? Emerald was slightly surprised and quickly asked. Why is it like this? The reason is still under investigation. Alcardios hesitated for a moment and then said. However, I found that the lock on the Eclipse Gate seems to have been unlocked a little. The lock on the Eclipse Gate was unlocked. Emerald was more and more surprised. But, to unlock the Eclipse Gate, one must use the keys of the 12 zodiac gates. Yes. Alcardios looked at Emerald and said. So, someone must have used part of the keys of the 12 zodiac gates to unlock the Eclipse Gate. Fatsue's complexion suddenly became somewhat uncertain. After a while, Emerald raised her head and looked at Alcardios. Let's go. Let's go to the Eclipse Gate. At the same time, in the Dragon Graveyard, Noah and Xuanai were still hugging each other with their eyes closed as if they were resting. At a certain moment, Noah's ears moved slightly, he opened his eyes and looked forward. There, a person in a black robe slowly walked over and stopped in front of Noah. Xuanai seemed to have noticed the footsteps and quickly opened her eyes. Under the gaze of Noah and Xuanai, the black-robed person reached out and lifted the hood of the cloak. Looking at the appearance that appeared under the hood, Noah and Xuanai were shocked almost at the same time. Lucy. It was Lucy. However, the other party lowered her head and spoke with a trace of vicissitudes of life on her face. I am not the Lucy of this era. Not the Lucy of this era. Noah and Xuanai were both startled. Under such circumstances, the other party looked straight at Noah and said this. I am from the future. Chapter 17:12. This was a very vast space. Moreover, it was located in the palace of Coloches. At first glance, this vast space looked like a hall. However, the size of this hall was not only comparable to an ordinary palace, but it also had an indescribable sense of solemnity. Even if it was said to be the palace of the king, there would definitely be people who would believe it. Unfortunately, this vast and solemn hall was completely empty. There was nothing in it at all. No, it should be said that apart from one thing, there was nothing else in this vast hall. That thing was a door. A very grand and tall door, its height alone reached more than 10 meters. It was engraved with the sun, moon, and stars, as if it was written with the truth of heaven and earth. Located in this hall, under the contrast of this very mysterious door, the solemn atmosphere in the air was particularly strong. Obviously, this was a place that not just anyone could enter, it was filled with an incredible sense of silence. At a certain moment, a series of footsteps began to sound. Emerald and Alcardios entered this vast hall together, came to the front of the magnificent door, and went straight to a device next to the door, then stopped in front of the device. Emerald looked at the device with a very serious gaze. The more she looked, the more serious Emerald's expression became. In the end, Emerald came to a conclusion. Yes, the lock was indeed opened a little. Without a doubt, someone must have used the key of the 12 zodiac gates to do this. And the person who can do this, besides me and the princess, is probably only that person. Alcardios continued Emerald's words. The person who suggested to the princess to use the solar eclipse plan to save the future. The person from the future. This was not a joke, nor was it an exaggeration. At least, Emerald and Alcardios knew that the so-called person from the future was completely valid. As long as he borrowed the power of the door in front of him, he could do this. Once opened, he can enter the torrent of time and freely travel back to the past the solar eclipse. Alcardios looked at the magnificent door in front of him and said as if talking to himself. Through this door, from the future to this era, no one knows better than him how to open the lock of the door. Fatesue heavily nodded her head and fell into her own memories. When did that person from the future come to this era? As for the specific time, Fatesue also didn't know. Fatesue only knew that the person from the future suddenly appeared in front of her one day and brought her a shocking news. July 7th, X 791. During this period of time, there will be 10,000 dragons attacking this country. This country and this era will be destroyed. Emerald whispered. The only way to avoid this is to gather mana and open the eclipse gate. Then, we can turn the massive mana into a huge cannon that can destroy 10,000 dragons. We can use this to destroy the huge dragon horde and save this country and the world. This was the reason why Emerald and Alcardios used the Great Magic Battle Show as a bait to hold an annual ceremony that would determine the ranking of the major guilds in the kingdom. They were secretly collecting the magic power of magic shooters from all over the kingdom. The eclipse gate that could allow people to freely travel back to the past. Through this gate, that person from the future came to this era and brought the news of 10,000 dragons attacking the kingdom and the world to Fatesue. For this reason, Fatesue and Alcardios spent 7 years to collect the mana needed to open the eclipse gate. This was because the people from the future had told Emerald that other than traveling to the past, the solar eclipse could also use the gathered magic power to launch a cannon. The power of the cannon was enough to destroy 10,000 giant dragons and save the country and the world. In addition to the huge amount of mana needed to open the eclipse gate, there was another condition to open it. That was to gather all the keys of the 12 zodiac gates and open the eclipse gate. This was the reason why there was a legend that once the 12 zodiac gates keys were gathered, the power was enough to change fate. As long as the 12 golden keys were gathered and the eclipse gate was opened, one could freely travel back to the past and change history and fate. That person from the future told Fatesue that in order to change the fate of the world being destroyed by 10,000 dragons, he came from the future. Using the mana he collected for 7 years to launch the eclipse cannon and destroy 10,000 dragons. This was the eclipse gate's plan. However, Fatesue had not decided whether to carry out this plan or not. The reason was simple, because Fatesue did not fully believe the words of that person from the future. Logically speaking, the dragons should have perished 400 years ago. Even if there were survivors, there should not be as many as 10,000 dragons. Fatesue looked at the tall gate. If that is the case, how could there be 10,000 dragons attacking the kingdom and the world being destroyed? Because of this, the princess has been hesitating whether to carry out the eclipse gate's plan or not, right? Alcardios understood Fatesue's thoughts. However, the person from the future who spoke to the princess left us a prophecy. That's right. Fatesue's eyes flashed. That person from the future said that the Great Demonic Martial Arts Exhibition will use a very special method to obtain the result. Based on that result, under normal circumstances, it should be impossible to happen. And if such a special result happens, then it can only prove that the words of that person from the future are true. Alcardio said the plan in Fatsue's heart. Chapter 17:13. Noah had 100 ways to deny the news brought by the future Lucy. Just like what Emerald said, 400 years ago, the dragon race had already been wiped out by Aeconarolia. Even if some survived, there shouldn't be as many as 10,000 dragons that survived. So, this matter was outrageous no matter how he thought about it. In addition, if there really were 10,000 dragons in this world, then humans would have been slaughtered by the dragons long ago. Why did they wait until now to welcome the dragon's attack? Where did the 10,000 dragons live before this? One question after another gave Noah ample reason to doubt Lucy. However, from Lucy's bitter face and painful voice, Noah couldn't arouse the slightest doubt. Therefore, Noah believed her. If you are really Lucy, then we have no reason to doubt your words. Noah looked straight at the future Lucy and said. But, if you came back to this era from the future, then I want to ask, in the future world, under the attack of 10,000 dragons, did we not resist at all? Resist? The future Lucy's tone became even more bitter. That was 10,000 dragons, how could we resist? Even if there were 10,000 dragons, couldn't we resist? Noah frowned. Did the future me not do anything? Although he didn't know the specific strength of the 10,000 attacking dragons, but 400 years ago, Aeconarolia alone was able to slaughter the entire dragon race. Even if the strength of those dragons far exceeded that of humans, it shouldn't reach the 4-digit level. Even if there were 10,000 dragons that didn't reach the 4-digit level, with Noah's strength, it shouldn't be impossible to resist, right? After all, 7 years ago in this world, Noah was already comparable to Aeconarolia. So, if even Aeconarolia could single-handedly slaughter an entire dragon race, then there was no reason why Noah couldn't do it. According to this, with Noah here, even if 10,000 dragons appeared, they shouldn't be unable to resist. Listening to Lucy's words, the future seemed to only be filled with despair and fear. However, something that Noah didn't expect happened. The future you. Lucy looked at Noah with an extremely hesitant gaze. After a while, she mustered up her courage and said such a sentence. Although I don't know what the future you did, in the future I know, you didn't appear at all. You didn't even exist in fairy tale. You. What did you say? Noah was really surprised. The future me isn't in a fairy tale. Not to mention not being there, I haven't even heard of your existence. The future Lucy said with great doubt. Logically speaking, with how powerful you are, I should have at least heard of you. However, as far as I can remember, the president has never adopted a child, much less a grandson by the name of Noah Dole. Thus, when I returned to this era and saw you, I was also very surprised. The doubt and surprise in the future Lucy's tone was indeed very strong. However, Lucy was not the only one who came from the future to this era. The guy who called himself Law once said that if there was no Noah in this year's Great Demonic Combat Arts competition, then the result would be doomed. In other words, Law knew very well what the future of this era would be without the existence of Noah. In this way, there was only one thing that could be proven. Law was also a person from the future. Moreover, Law also arranged a plan with the solar eclipse as the center in an attempt to do something. Was it because Law clearly knew that 10,000 dragons were about to attack this world, and this world was heading toward destruction, so he wanted to change that fate? Or did he have other plans? Noah felt that he was getting closer to the truth. At this moment, Xuanai suddenly hesitated and said so. Sir Noah, I think, from the future, there is more than one person who came to this era. The future Lucy was startled. Noah was also slightly startled and looked at Xuanai. Under Noah's gaze, Xuanai pursed her lips and said in a low voice, "I know the true identity of the person who called himself Law." With that said, Xuanai told Noah a name. Hearing that name, Noah's eyes flashed and fell into silence again. "I'm sorry, although I came to this era from the future, I didn't bring any plan to save this era." The future Lucy suppressed the emotions in her heart and said to Noah emotionally, "But, you are so powerful, you must have a way to save this era. I beg you, save this era, save my companions, save our future." Hearing this, Noah smiled. "You don't need to say that, I will do that." Chapter 17:14. In the future, when Lucy found Noah and told him what would happen in the future, Noah gradually began to realize the hidden undercurrents of this year's Great Demonic Combat Arts exhibition game. Many things were happening outside. First, in order to prepare to open the Eclipse Gate at any time, Alcardios went to the Inn of Fairy Tale, hoping to talk to Lucy. Of course, in the inn, Alusha, Wendy, Naz, and Gray, who were originally in the same group as Lucy, were also present. After some negotiations, the group agreed to discuss with Alcardios, and under Alcardios' lead, they arrived at the location of the Eclipse Gate. There, Alcardios told Alusha and the others a part of the Eclipse plan, and hoped to get Lucy's help. However, before Lucy could reply, someone barged in and directly arrested Alcardios, Alusha, and the others. It was the Minister of National Defense of the Fiori Kingdom, Dardan. This Minister of National Defense did not know the true content of the Eclipse plan, but he knew that Alcardios was preparing to open the Eclipse Gate that could travel through time and space. Under such circumstances, Dardan thought that Alcardios was preparing to use the Eclipse Gate to return to the past and then do something to change history, and expressed extremely strong opposition to this. Thus, without knowing the true contents of the solar eclipse plan, the Minister of Defense barged in with his soldiers in order to protect the current history. He directly captured Alcardios and imprisoned the star elven archmage who could open the solar eclipse gate, which was Lucy, as an accomplice. As for Alusha, Wendy, Naz, Gray, and the others, they were all chased out of the palace and sent back to the inn. When the High Mages of Fairy Tale found out about this matter, they were all furious. If it was just to arrest Alcardios, it would have been fine. However, in order to prevent the solar eclipse from taking place, Dutton treated Lucy as an accomplice and imprisoned her. This undoubtedly violated the fairy tale's taboo. Therefore, before dawn, Makarov made arrangements for Naz, Wendy, Mira, Hubby, Xia Lulu, and Lily to form a team. When the finals of the Great Demon Combat Arts competition began tomorrow, they would sneak into the palace and rescue Lucy. In addition, Alusha, Gray, Gadjalu, Julian, and Laxas were in charge of attending tomorrow's finals, attracting the kingdom's attention to the Great Demon Combat Arts competition so that Naz and the others could take advantage of the situation and rescue Lucy. As for the others, they continued to search for Noah and Xuanai. Fairy Tale, who had prepared everything properly, did not notice anything. On the top of a building opposite the Fairy Tale Hotel, Law quietly watched the development of all this, and an evil smile gradually appeared on his face. Although a lot of accidents have happened, now, history has begun to go on the right track. If it continues to develop like this, the result of tomorrow's Great Demon Combat Arts competition will definitely be the same as the history I know. As a person from the future, Law clearly knows what the result of tomorrow's Great Demon Combat Arts competition will be. In order to let Emerald trust him and open the Gate of Eclipse, Law told Emerald the result. If that result appears, it can prove that the future Law said is true, and Emerald will open the Gate of Eclipse. However, Law did not expect that in this era, there would be a person who has no intersection with the history he knows. Noah Dole. Law's expression became uncertain. That guy, who the hell is he? Not only does he not exist in the history that Law is familiar with, but he also has that kind of power beyond the scope of human beings, so LoveLore really has a deep fear of Noah. If this variable that does not exist in history is allowed to continue to be active in the Great Demon Combat Arts competition, then, in the end, the prophecy that LoveLore told Emerald will definitely collapse because of the intervention of Noah, a person who does not exist. At that time, Emerald will no longer help LoveLore open the Gate of Eclipse. If the Gate of Eclipse cannot be opened, then LoveLore's coming to this era will become meaningless. Therefore, LoveLore did not hesitate to take away Xuan'ai at the risk of angering Noah at any time to restrict Noah and guide history back to the track he is familiar with. And LoveLore's efforts were not in vain after all. Although a lot of things have happened that deviated from the history I know, now, history is finally back on the right track, and my prophecy will definitely be fulfilled. Let Emerald believe my words and open the Gate of Eclipse. LoveLore raised the corner of his mouth. At that time, even if you, Noah Dole, are beyond common sense and stronger than all humans, it will be useless. After leaving this sentence, LoveLore directly turned into a black shadow and disappeared quietly as if blending into the moonlit night. On the other side, in the palace, Emerald, who learned that Alcardios was taken down, hurriedly went to Dutton and told him the real content of the Eclipse plan. W.H. What? In Emerald's room, a short old man was shocked. 10,000 dragon generals are attacking the kingdom. How can that kind of thing happen? I know you won't believe it. In fact, I don't believe it either. Emerald closed her eyes. That's why I decided to only prepare to open the Gate of Eclipse until the end of the Great Demon Combat Arts competition. Whether to carry out the Eclipse plan and open the Gate of Eclipse will have to wait for the results of the Great Demon Combat Arts competition. You intend to entrust the future of the kingdom to the results of a festival? Dutton said with a somewhat ugly expression. Princess, isn't that a bit inappropriate? Apart from this, is there anything else we can do? Emerald smiled helplessly. As long as there is a 1 in 10,000 chance that this kingdom will be in danger, we must prepare for the future of this kingdom. Dutton opened his mouth, but no words came out. Whether to carry out the Eclipse plan or not, let's wait for the results of the Great Demon Combat Arts competition to tell me. The helpless smile on Emerald's face turned into an expression full of determination. She stared at the gradually brightening sky outside and said, Before the results come out, I won't believe any of this. But, is the result possible? Dutton hesitated and said. Based on the current situation, without Noah Dole's participation, the result that the person from the future mentioned should be very difficult to appear, right? Because it's difficult to appear. Once it appears, it can prove that what the person from the future said is true. Emerald looked at Dutton and said very seriously. So, all we can do is wait for the results to appear. I understand. Dutton said in a deep voice. If it's for the future of this kingdom, I will support Her Royal Highness. Thank you very much for your understanding, Minister. Emerald nodded and immediately, once again, looked at the gradually brightening sky outside. At this time, Emerald's mind was only thinking about the prophecy that LoveLore told her. The sorcerers of the guild, Fairy Tale, will defeat their opponents one by one. In the end, they will face Sting of the Saber-Tooth, with wounds all over their bodies. All of them will be unharmed, and Sting will kneel down and surrender. This result, no one could have predicted. Because of this, LoveLore's prophecy seemed to be very convincing when it came true. Everything depends on the results of the Great Demon Combat Arts competition. Emerald, who had made up her mind, didn't notice it. In the night sky outside, a figure that looked like a fairy was floating there like a ghost. Looking down, a thoughtful light flashed in her emerald gem-like eyes. It seems that something incredible has really happened. Mavis looked in the direction of the hotel where Fairy Tale was located. After a while, she smiled sweetly. There's no other way, let's go help those children. Chapter 17:15. The next day, as soon as the sun rose, the citizens of Coloccus were in high spirits. Because today was the finals of the Great Demonic Arts Tournament. After today's tournament, in the following year, the rankings of the various guilds from all over the Fiori Kingdom would be revealed. The citizens of Coloccus were very much looking forward to this. Without a doubt, this year's Great Demonic Arts Tournament was much more exciting than the previous ones. In the previous Great Demonic Arts exhibition matches, it was basically Sabertooth who was unparalleled. Kara and Leo, who belonged to the Lamia scale, didn't participate in the previous Great Demon Combat Arts exhibition at all. Kagura, who was a member of the Mermaid Heel, had never appeared in the Great Demon Combat Arts Tournament in the past. This way, Sabertooth naturally didn't have any strong opponents and was almost always successful, easily winning the championship every time. Although this made Sabertooth's popularity quite high, in terms of the level of excitement of the tournament, it definitely couldn't compare to this year's Great Demonic Arts Tournament. Not to mention, in this year's Great Demonic Combat Arts exhibition, the Fairy Tale had appeared out of nowhere. So, this year's Great Demonic Arts Tournament was very exciting, and many people were looking forward to it. And the last day of the Great Demonic Arts Tournament was quickly approaching. Today, the cheers of the audience were much louder than the previous days, and people's spirits began to soar. Under such circumstances, the finals of the Great Demonic Arts Tournament began. Unlike the previous days. On the last day of the Great Demonic Arts Tournament, there was no part of the tournament, nor was there a part of the duel, only a competition. Survival battle. The venue of the tournament was the entire Coloccus. The teams of the major guilds would be scattered to different corners of Coloccus, and would be free to move as soon as the tournament began. During the period of movement, there were no restrictions on methods, no restrictions on magic, and when they met, they could either fight or escape. No matter what, in the end, as long as an opponent couldn't continue to fight, they would get 1 point. This point would be added to the total score of each team. In addition, each team would have a captain. The captain's name list was not public. However, when the team leader was defeated, the team that defeated the team leader would receive 5 points, which would also be added to the total score. According to this calculation, when all the contestants in a team were defeated, they would be able to provide a high score of 9 points. Defeating all the contestants from other teams, the highest score would be 45 points. Therefore, even if it was Cotter Cerberus, who was currently in last place with only 12 points, they still had a chance to turn the tables and win the game. At this point, other than Fairy Tale and Sabertooth, the rest of the guilds had all left the stage. However, Elusha, Gray, Julian, Gadjaloo, and Laxus were all heavily injured and couldn't even stand properly. Sabertooth, on the other hand, only had one person left. That person was Justin. From beginning to end, Justin hadn't engaged in a large-scale battle. Whether it was his stamina or magic power, he was at his peak. Facing a group of opponents who couldn't even stand properly, Justin, who was at his peak, had no reason to lose. However, what happened next made everyone's jaws drop. Facing Elusha's team, Justin had a feeling that he couldn't win no matter what. Under the pressure of that feeling, Justin couldn't help but kneel in front of Elusha's team and choose to surrender. No one could have predicted this result. However, the victory of Fairy Tale still made the entire audience cheer, bringing the curtains to the Great Demon Battle Arts exhibition to an end. In the midst of the cheers that soared into the sky, no one would have thought of that at this moment. It was this shocking result that led to the beginning of the disaster that followed. In the hallway of the palace, Emerald, who was dressed as a Valkyrie, led a large group of people and walked towards the solar eclipse with a serious expression. Next to her, Dayton also had a serious expression and spoke in a deep voice. I didn't expect it to be this result. This can only prove that what the future person said is true. Emerald's eyes flashed with determination. In order to save this country, save this world, I will start the solar eclipse. At the same time, in the dragon graveyard, Noah was looking at a dragon skeleton, thinking about something. At a certain moment, a black shadow flashed behind Noah. Lowell raised his eyes and looked at Noah, who was looking at the dragon skeleton with his back to him, and said with surprise, "Since you really stayed until now, I thought you would leave. I also thought you wouldn't come, but didn't you come?" Noah turned and looked at Law. "Should I continue to call you Law? Or should I call you Roger?" You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.